Ahoy, everyone. My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every mini-series we chart a course through the filmography, through the full filmography of an underdiscussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discussing new things about the medium we love so much. We are currently embedded in the films of Joe Wright, and today we hold up in our apartment for his 8th film, The Woman in the Window, and see how many trauma cliches we can fit into one movie. Nick, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to talk about this movie. Like, we had discussed maybe not doing a full episode on this movie because neither one of us had seen it yet. And I got about 20 minutes into it and I texted you and I was like, please, let's do a full episode on this movie. I just knew. I knew right away that this was something special, and it is something special. So I'm very excited to be here.
Oh boy. So I don't know how many people have seen The Woman in the Window. More people are probably more familiar with the book because it was a very popular book when it was released. But it is a story about a child psychologist who has agoraphobia and is stuck in her apartment, and she witnesses what she thinks is a murder across the street from her apartment. But it seems like maybe she didn't, maybe she did. She's in a weird mental state. She's taking medication. She's drinking a lot. She's kind of losing her mind a little bit, and you're really called into question. It's one of those unreliable protagonist sort of movies where you're wondering, okay, what is real, what isn't? What are we seeing that's real, what's not? Completely all-star, crazy cast, right? Amy Adams, Julianne Moore, Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman coming off his Oscar win for his previous Joe Wright movie 2 years before this in Darkest Hour, which you just talked about. You know, you're discussing the plot of this movie, and that kind of reminds me of a film I might have seen before. You almost...
We'll talk about this.
I can't think of the name of it, but, you know, there's one of those unreliable narrators who kind of starts spying on his neighbors and thinks he witnesses a murder. It's a great plot. Pretty original, but I don't know. It has the ring of something, maybe.
It does have the ring of something. Let me get to this cast really quick. Wyatt Russell, Brian Tyree Henry, Anthony Mackie, and then Fred Heckinger, who plays the son of Gary Oldman in the movie.
He's going to come up tonight.
Oh, yeah, he'll come up a few times. A lot of those people are going to come up a few times, though maybe not that much because most people aren't in the movie that much, which is crazy. So, yes, it's very Rear Window adjacent, obviously. This is not the first time there's been a story or a movie that is almost directly tried to take that premise and do something with it. This is kind of a type of voyeuristic thriller or voyeuristic mystery story. It was very in vogue and it's still a little bit in vogue, but not as much anymore, for probably a 5-year period in the literary world. Girl on the Train, they're all sort of like, I was watching someone and I saw something weird, but did I really see what I thought I saw? Big thing for a while, right?
Well, that and just sort of domestic suspense thrillers in general. Like, this is not too long. I mean, it's within 10 years of Gone Girl and kind of the Gillian Flynn?
Gillian Flynn, yes. But I would say
a couple things. There's a miniseries, Sharp Objects, and a couple of her things. Some less well-received adaptations, which I didn't see, but Gone Girl was kind of a phenomenon for a while.
Yes, I do want to draw a line, though. One thing is that you're talking, yes, about this, let's say, airport thriller type of book. Gillian Flynn writes a sort of a different type of story than what this. I think all this is born out of the popularity of that stuff, and it becomes this stuff, and now it's kind of become something else if you're paying attention to like the Goodreads world, I would call it, because that's where
I agree with that. I mean, her stuff, at least I don't know if I've ever actually read any of hers, but I've seen some of the adaptations, and yeah, it's a little bit more thoughtful than this. It's a little bit less of a kind of an airport read kind of thing, although the themes are very similar, and the
yes, 100%.
You mentioned the trauma. These movies, the one that I always think of, and it definitely dawned on me watching this, The Girl on the Train, or The Woman on the Train.
The Girl on the
I hated that movie so much, and I think it was just because it was so just stone-faced serious about all these things, and I remember just calling it like white people depression porn, and this movie is that, but it's we'll get into it, but it's that, and it's also kind of not that.
Yeah, so obviously, like, that's, I mean, as much as this movie is really about do you trust what you've seen it or not? Really, that's a lot of what this movie's about, both for the people in the movie and you as the viewer, right? That it's communicating both ways, going back and forth with you. There isn't that what I said is the plot of the movie. There isn't really anything else to the plot of the movie other than like some thriller moments and some like, oh, we thought this was going to happen, but this happened and blah, blah, whatever. So a little history of the movie, which I think is very fascinating because I didn't really know any of this before I saw it. And I wrote a note down, which is absolutely not true, but I'll tell you about it when we get to it. So this movie was one of the last Fox 2000 movies, which it was one of their, sub-labels that they would do. It was following in that like Fox Atomic like kind of vein of like, we're gonna do sort of genre-y stuff with this label, right? I don't even think it was never very successful for them in general. This is based off a novel by A.J. Finn, who's actually, that's a pen name. I don't remember the author's actual name, but it's
Daniel Mallory, who is, I didn't know anything about this guy, and then diving down the rabbit hole of him, it's pretty interesting stuff there. So I didn't realize, I thought I knew this was a pretty popular book. He sold the rights to it before it was even published, to Fox 2000, which was then acquired by Disney, and they immediately said, we're shuttering this, which kind of made sense, because as you were saying, they didn't really have any runaway successes. So this was the last movie released under the Fox 2000 umbrella. But by the time, like between the book being acquired and then this film, was in production, and then a bunch of stuff came out about the author being he was accused of plagiarism, interestingly, of another movie, Copycat, which I vaguely remember seeing from the 90s.
I saw that movie a few times. I worked in a video store. I remember the poster so freaking
it was a great poster.
Perfectly. Yep. And I wrote that down in my notes, is that it's very copycat-ish. Now, not because that's also about, I think, Sigourney Weaver in that movie. She's like a criminal psychologist who is...
Yeah, and the villain in that is Harry Connick Jr.,
Connick Jr. It's also Holly Hunter is also in that movie. It's a good... movie.
It is. Yeah. I remember liking that a lot. It's kind of a post-790s serial killer thriller.
It's exactly what it is. Yeah.
With the agoraphobia angle. So,
yes. The window wishes that it was Copycat.
God, yeah. But I will say, this is, if it's ripping off anything, it's ripping off Rear Window and also ripping off the rip-offs of Rear Window.
Yes,
there's a little Disturbia in this. I like that movie too.
Disturbia.
That's a clever update of Rear Window.
Yeah.
This one maybe not so much.
And also more honest about the fact that it is a retelling.
It's a loving homage, not a no, you've never seen that. Trust me.
Yeah.
But what I was saying about Mallory was he is kind of an interesting story in and of itself. Not only was the book accused of plagiarism, but also his own personal life. I guess he kind of fabricated some of his past and his career and his health history. It was like a million
James
little pieces.
Gray. Yeah, James Gray. James Gray, not James Gray.
James Gray's the filmmaker, but you're close.
It's close to that.
James something. Yep.
Right.
Maybe another color.
Maybe another color.
I don't know. Yeah, but James Fry.
James Fry?
James Frey? Yeah.
James Frey.
I think it was that. Yeah.
James Frey. So James Gray, close. I was pretty close.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was literally one letter wrong.
But yeah, it's a similar situation to that. Yeah. And not that really should affect the movie. They made a movie out of his stuff after all of that stuff had come out. And
that doesn't matter really, right?
It doesn't, although I don't know. I do see some connection, I think, in what the story is and where it came from and what this movie actually turned out to be. I have a theory about this movie, but we'll get to that.
So like you said, the book was sold basically off the manuscript before it was published. And it goes into production pretty fast. It was supposed to be released in 2019. So it's probably shot in 2018, right? Right after, right after Darkest Hour, right? So Wright is going right from this to Darkest Hour. So I had mistakenly thought, right, that from just watching this movie, I was like, oh, is this another like COVID core movie? Because if you were to watch this movie and someone watched it, you tell them this was shot during COVID, they would 100% believe you, because there are rarely two people in the same room together. When they are sitting very far apart or very oddly blocked.
We're going to get so much into the direction of this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about from it. So, but it's not. It was shot in 2018, so it's released in 2019. It got delayed.
Test audiences hated it and were confused by it, so they went back and reshot it.
I'm so curious about what are the things they put in. Like,
Oh, me too. And I couldn't find any information on that.
No.
But what I was like, I was wrong about this too, because this was a Netflix movie. Like there's no box office information on this one because it was never released in theaters. And this felt so Netflixy to me. I thought this was like Netflix threw a bunch of money at Joe Wright and Tracy Letts, who was the writer of this. Yeah. And that was the plan from the get-go, but it actually wasn't. It was supposed to be a theatrical release. Some producers of this, there's a great IndieWire article about the sort of disaster that this movie was. And I don't know if this is just wishful thinking or whatever, but they were talking like Oscar buzz for this, probably because of the people involved. Certainly not because of the story or the movie itself, but they were looking at this like a prestige pick. And eventually, once the test screenings went bad and they had to reshoot a lot of it, it missed its release date. It was supposed to be released like May of 2020 during COVID. They obviously didn't want to do that. That probably would have made some money at the box office, but then it got pushed back to the following year. And Netflix, after they canceled that original release, that's when Netflix stepped in. So this was a Netflix acquisition, not a Netflix production.
Which they don't do a lot from a movie that was originally supposed to be in theaters. If they don't get it before especially it was ever supposed to be in theaters, like they'll come in like Hitman, stuff like that. They'll come in at a festival and be like, Richard Linklater will give you X amount of millions of dollars. Give us your movie, right?
Right, but this is the era, like when this comes out, this is when Netflix is basically just financing their own stuff, like that. What's the one with The Rock? That nobody.
There's a few of them.
That like Notice? Everybody saw, but nobody remembers.
Are you speaking of Red Notice?
Red Notice,
the one with Ryan Reynolds and Gal Gadot in it.
I did not realize they were in it too. I just remember The Rock. I didn't see it, and I didn't really care to see it.
See it either. But
I also Red One has The Rock in it, which is not a Netflix movie.
Oh, that's
also a box
Jake
office failure.
Theatrical film. Yeah.
Talk about a rabbit hole. Anyway.
Yeah. So me too. Like exactly. I think the Netflix of it all, the year it came out, obviously, the way it's sort of staged and filmed. I thought like, okay, this is a Netflix COVID movie, like Spiderhead, right? We have already done one of these.
Yeah.
Right. And
which is exactly what you do as a prestige director or an A-list director like Kaczynski and like Joe Wright at this point. Well, if you have no other choice, like if you have to make that kind of movie, then it's better than not making a movie at all.
Exactly.
And this definitely could have been that, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
This was all intentional, Bobby.
All intentional.
This was a plan that somebody had.
I'm wondering when the Girl on the Train movie came out. 2016. So the year before this is set to shoot, that's when that movie is dropping. And the year that this is bought is when that movie is coming out, right? That book is I think her name is Paula Hawkins, is the author of The Girl on the Train. Incredibly successful book. Just like this book ended up being incredibly successful. There is a reason why studios were like, we want to make these books into movies. And of course, yes, coming up like Gone Girl is sort of reminds studios that you can take a really popular book and make it into a successful movie, right? So they all of a sudden, not only are the books copying Gillian or Gillian Flynn, I don't know, whatever it is, and her style, the other studios are doing exactly what they always do, which is going, we want to make our Gone Girl, right? So you can totally see why The Girl on the Train is very popular. There's a movie adaptation that's gonna come out. It's starring Emily Blunt. The studio is like, we want our version of this. We're gonna buy this, right? But obviously, then The Girl on the Train comes out and does terribly. It's terribly received. But they go, okay, well, that partly for studio, they go, okay, that's good because now we won't seem like the also ran. We can be like, no, we're the good one of these. Obviously, that didn't work out that way, right? But
but like I said, wishful thinking on the part of the studio. Like this is going to be the good one.
You sink $40 million into this movie, which the Joe Wright budgets are like pretty crazy when you really look at them and what especially a movie like this, like where did that $40 million go? We'll talk about it, I think, but we'll go through that. It's shot in New York City, which is also fascinating because if you look at the behind the scenes of this movie, they did do a cool thing, which is they built this entire apartment in a studio in Brooklyn.
See, I didn't notice that. And watching this movie, like if you had told me this entire thing was shot on a soundstage and the last shot was CGI, I would have been like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, no, but it's actually, if you watch, there's a couple, I can only find, funny enough, there's not a lot of behind the scenes material on this movie, but there were some, when it was coming out, Netflix was doing their promotional cycle, which they tend to release sort of like, featurettes on their movies. And this one, they showed the set, and it was kind of crazy, right? It's a huge set, much like the Spiderhead thing. It's a huge set where like they could take the walls out, right? And so when you see her coming down the stairs sometimes, like basically the other side of her, there's nothing. It's just like a precipice. Sometimes she had to be on a wire when she was on those stairs because literally it was just like a cutout of the apartment. But so they're shooting on a soundstage in Brooklyn. They created this big set. They also obviously the exteriors are actually shot in New York City. Obviously, there apparently were reshoots. Tony Gilroy, king of the bring the guy in to rewrite stuff, comes in.
So much talent under one roof.
Yeah, who knows what again, when you have something that's this far along, it's broken, it's very, very hard to bring it back. Studios always try with reshoots and stuff like that, but if the core of your movie is rotten, there's just no way you're gonna reshoot your way to something that's good, right? You can reshoot your way from something that's a 2, something that's a 4, but you can't go from a 2 to an 8, right? With reshoots, a lot to do with test screenings. Like we said, people found plot points confusing and they wanted to clear some stuff up. And we talked about the kind of, post-production life of the movie where it was delayed and then canceled and sold to Netflix and then it comes out in May of 2021. So I think people can probably tell from the way we're talking about the movie so far, but the movie's not good. I wouldn't say, I would say, is it a complete and utter disaster? No, probably not. There were some things about it that I was like, okay, that was kind of interesting, but it's not a good movie. And it is also commits the biggest sin a mystery story can possibly tell, which is that it is one of the most predictable movies I have ever watched in my life. I was just saying things out loud at the beginning of the movie, being like, well, obviously this is what's going to happen. Obviously this is what's going to happen. And every single one of those things, maybe there was a twist in between them and you think like, oh, maybe I was wrong. But by the end, I was wrong.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, the ending, it kind of comes out of nowhere. Like the final twist in this movie and that
called it.
Wild third act. Did you really?
I called it.
That caught me off guard just because it was so poorly set up and so poorly, like, everything is explained in 30 seconds at the end. It's one of those sorts of things. So I guess that one caught me a little bit off guard. Yeah, I mean, yes, this is a bad movie. I think this is a really, really interesting bad movie. I was very entertained by it. It's certainly not good, but I do think this is a camp classic, and there is a really terrific GQ article that is probably the most positive thing that was written about this film. Like even the better reviews, if you go on Metacritic or something like that, they all kind of acknowledge that this is trash and that it's very, very big talents making a very poor project. But I think if you look at it through the lens of this is very smart people making a very dumb movie and knowing that they're making a very dumb movie, and I think that intention is kind of stamped all over it. You can kind of tell in just about every choice this movie makes. I think everyone knew this was going to be a turd, and they just kind of had fun with it.
I mean, I disagree with you.
Okay.
I don't think there's any way. I think you're giving these people way too much credit.
These people know what they're doing. We've been talking about Joe Wright for a while now.
They do. And I'm not saying that they don't know what they're doing, but I think that if you think all these like 12 super famous people who came into this going like, we're going to make a real stupid movie that's going to be bad. Like, that's just not what they were doing.
I think 100% that's what they're doing. I think you get people like that together and like every one of them gives the worst performance of their career. Like you can't plan that. That is, I mean, you can't just expect that to happen out of nowhere. Yes, you can't plan that.
That's what I'm telling you. Like, there's no way that this was done. They made a bad movie on purpose. There is just no way.
I think they did. I think this is a movie that is as much a parody of itself as it is anything else. It's, I feel like there is an intention and there's a knowing wink that
you do this all the time, dude, where you're like, I can see into the minds of the people who made this movie. And I think
I would stake whatever reputation I have on it. I think this one was intentional.
You think they intentionally wasted $40 million in people's time to make a bad movie? In what world these people, Amy Adams, anyone, in what world would they ever do that?
I feel like they could do it. I feel like all of them are at a point in their career where it's like, we've got our good stuff out of the way. People know what we're capable of. Let's have fun and, really camp this up. I really, literally, I feel like every choice, that was the intention. There's not one conventional choice in this entire movie. The story is entirely, it's the most pedestrian, stupid thing imaginable. But like, I think they knew that right from the get-go, and it's like, all right, let's go for broke here. Like, there are interesting choices. There are some scenes in this movie that I am never going to forget. And I think it is I really feel like this was done on purpose. And, the joke's on you kind of thing. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just, like you said, reading too much into it. But to me, this is very clearly they knew to me what they were doing.
I just have seen nothing in any text or listening to the very little interviews I could hear with these people that would in any place give me that.
Well, why would you tell people?
But why would you? It just seems like a waste of time. The reason I have a difficult believing that is because, I just don't believe that, because you're wasting the audience's time if that's the case. And like, do you think they're just
like
cynical,
my time was wasted,
mean people that would be like, we're gonna make a bad movie that people are not gonna like on purpose? Like, I just don't think that's true. Like maybe they're going for something. Maybe they were like, let's make something really like over stylized, and let's go for like a heightened, tone and mood. Like, I definitely see that.
Well, it's definitely that. I mean, whatever you think, it definitely is that. But I think there's like, it just feels like it has the whiff of parody to me. Like
that's because it's so bad, Nick, and because they parodied it so many times. I'm telling you right now, that parody show that Netflix did, The Woman in the Window, blah, blah, whatever, the one with Kristen Bell or whatever, is better mystery than this movie is.
I want to watch that now.
That is a straight up parody.
Having seen this, I really want to see that. I don't know. I'd like, this feels like a very, it's a subtle but knowing wink, I think, because we've seen a bad Joe Wright movie before, right? Pan, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about it. That movie is terrible, and I feel like they were going for something there, and maybe it was edited in a way that didn't really match what they were trying to do. That to me is just a bad movie. This is, at worst, it's a so bad it's a good movie, and at best I think it's a very smart, just like a piss take on this disreputable genre. And it's
but when they were making this movie, it was not yet a disreputable genre. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, this is one of the movies that cemented it as that.
I disagree.
That's what I'm saying.
Joe Wright's previous adaptation, we talked about this a few weeks ago as well, was Anna Karenina. So he went from Tolstoy to A.J. Finn. He had to know what he was doing.
Well, I know he doesn't think he's making Anna Karenina again, Nick, but that doesn't mean that. I mean, I will say this. To say that there is no worth in making a modern day literary adaptation or even like a fun thriller adaptation, I think you're being a little bit snotty if it's Tolstoy or it's the shithouse.
No, but I mean, this is because it's heavily influenced by Hitchcock. Obviously, it's heavily influenced by De Palma. I mean, it's really more of a De Palma pastiche than a Hitchcock pastiche. But
so it's a pastiche of a pastiche.
Pastiche of a pastiche. But like, De Palma made brilliant movies. I mean, Pauline Kael, Appreciating Great Trash. Right? It's this idea that De Palma knew that his movies were silly and over the top and campy, and kind of just went for broke with it. This feels like that, but even like another layer of self-parody beyond that to me.
See, I think like I would buy that if it went farther than it does. But there are like 3 scenes to me that play that, and the rest of it is sort of a listless nothing that sort of exists
through the whole movie.
In between those 2 things.
I want you to see it. You're never going to watch it again, but I want you to see it again.
I'm never going to watching.
I might have, maybe I was just in the right mindset. I was sober. Let's not accuse me of anything, but man, I thought this movie was a riot. Like from the first viewing, I did end up watching it twice, as I was saying to you before the show, not because I thought I needed to see it again, just because toward the end, when things got very crazy, I was just getting tired. It was just late at night. It's not because the movie bored me into a stupor, but I wanted to experience. And then there was so much that I enjoyed in the first half because of its ridiculousness that I was like, I might as well just watch this all the way through again. I also got to share it with my wife, who I knew she wouldn't think it was good, but I was like, I think you'll find this movie fascinating the same way I do, and I'm not sure if that's true, but she did stick it out. She did see the whole thing, so she's a little more on your tip.
And I will say this, Nick, when I say what I'm saying, it's not to take away from what you're saying, which is that I think the movie falls incredibly far into campiness at times, and is one of those movies where you can be like, oh my God, I cannot believe this is what they decided to do. My argument with you is that I don't think that's intentional. I don't think that Joe Wright was hoping you'd go, this is so fucking stupid. Like, I don't think that that's what he was hoping you would react that way to it. So it's not to take away, there's two different experiences, right? There is the creator's intent, and then the audience takes it however they're going to take it. You know what I mean? And I think like the movie does have a little bit of that like craziness to it because of, I think a million bad decisions. But I think it's, and again, I think like it's great you had a great time with it. I just think taking that great time and transposing it into Joe Wright's brain and Amy Adams's brain and Gary Oldman's brain and Julianne Moore's and all those people, where they're like, I just don't believe it in even a little bit.
Well, me and Kyle Turner of GQ think that. So
Yeah,
at least there's
yeah.
two of us in the world. It's me and you against the world, Kyle. But anyway, yes, I didn't just have a good time with this movie. I had two good times with this movie.
So I will agree with Richard Lawson, the one out of 10 review.
Well, that's a really fun review also.
Yeah, Richard Lawson's awesome. Great critic, great frequent podcast guest of podcasts I listen to about movies.
He seemed to have high hopes for this. Like he knew the story was trash, but like maybe we can turn it into, spin that into something kind of brilliant like Gone Girl. And he was very much let down by what this movie turned out, which, is a fair assessment of this movie. It is, if you're going into this like this is going to be a solid thriller, it is certainly not a solid thriller in any way.
Yeah, but definitely, if you got a kick out of this, watch, can't remember the name of it, but watch the Kristen Bell like Netflix thing, because that is so, I think we talked about this before, is so weird because it's obviously ridiculous, right? But it is playing it much more like what you're talking about, where it feels like it's completely serious. Like even the point where like you're like, I know this is a joke, but everybody in it is playing it so seriously and so like this is real what's happening, and I was so struck by something, which was Amy Adams drops a lot of stuff in this movie. Drops a lot of glasses, drops a lot of
so much broken glass in this movie.
So many broken glasses, so many things. Her computer, her camera, you name anything she can hold in her hands, she's gonna drop it on the ground.
Well, the original title was Butterfingers, and they decided The Woman in the Window sounded a little more mysterious.
And in that parody, like Kristen Bell drops like 17 casserole dishes, like.
I need to see that then.
It's good. But also kind of an interesting, good mystery sometimes as well. So.
Well, this reminds me of, or that, I mean, I didn't watch that, but do you remember the Will Ferrell thing from, maybe 10, 12 years ago, where it was like a Lifetime movie, like a parody of Lifetime movies, but played like totally straight? I forget the name of it. And I've always wanted to see that because supposedly it's played a lot straighter than you would think, particularly with like Will Ferrell in it. Like it is, it's a parody, but it's like not a very over the top. It's a very subtle parody of that stuff. And I think that's a really interesting, subset of movies, right? These very knowing, very, like you have to understand a genre like in and out to be able to do that. I feel like this is that too, but I think that's an interesting thing also to do, not a Zucker Brothers Airplane style parody, which you also have to know a genre pretty well to do that, but something that is more, for a viewer that is not attuned to what it actually is, might actually think this is the real thing.
Yeah. Because this is the real thing. Like, that's what I'm trying to argue with you about.
This one, I'm saying it's not, but yes, supposedly it is.
My biggest thing I can give you that I think proves you wrong, that's in the text of the movie and not something I'm trying to imagine someone's thinking, is the scene where you find out what happened to her family is played completely straight, and you are supposed to be like, this is devastating. Like when and
I'll tell you, there was a couple moments in that scene that did get me pretty good.
So like, how do you feel about that scene? That scene to me disproves your theory on this movie, which is that scene is shot and framed in a way that is meant to evoke emotion and evoke a connection to the character. Not, look how crazy this is. Like that's not what you're supposed to be feeling in that moment, Is the thing hyper stylized? Absolutely. You
mean when she crashes her car into an After Effects plugin?
Yeah. Well, the amount of technical expertise on skill is another thing, but this is the thing I don't want to do, which is why I'm saying this. I don't want to excuse poor filmmaking, because
That's fair.
You know, that's what all I'm saying is like, and this is why I try to get away from like the, well, maybe it's not his fault, like type of like stuff, because like we can only talk about what's in front of us. And I don't want to say like, well, they knew they were bad, so that's an excuse for it being bad. Like I just like, if you knew it was bad and you made it to potentially bad, it's still bad to me. You know what I mean? So let's take it on that, like on those grounds. But so let's go a little bit through the movie so we can kind of, because the characters show up so sparsely in this, other than Amy Adams, it's a good way, I think, to like talk about the different performances and the different things that are going on.
I can't wait.
Yeah. So I will say, first of all, just another general thought. Mystery itself was not any fun.
No. And the solution of it is like such an anticlimax. There's a couple of reviews that said that, but like it's beyond anticlimax. Although, I mean, there are some fun moments in that third act, but the reveals are just
there are fun moments sprinkled out to the whole movie, but it's like, when I'm watching this is explicitly a mystery movie about like what happened and how did it happen and who actually did it, right? Like it's giving you all the murder mystery things. I can take a pretty bad movie if that part of it is at least fun, right? Because it's just,
and if it's clever, yes. If it's a bad movie but the reveal of the mystery is clever, I always have to give a movie credit for that. So
yeah,
I was hoping right up until the last couple of minutes that this was going to pull one of those, you know, kind of astounding reveals and recontextualize everything. It recontextualizes basically nothing. I mean, it kind of introduces things at the last minute which are not very exciting at all.
No. So let's just say we're gonna spoil the entire movie
for all of you chomping at the bit to see this movie.
Yeah, I've been waiting to watch them in the window. I can't believe you're gonna spoil it for me. This movie that no one saw that came out 4 years ago
that you can watch for free.
Exactly, at any point. You could have watched it free at any point in the last 4 years.
It was the 27th or 29th most viewed film on Netflix that year, so it had that going for it.
I know it did well, like its first couple of weeks. It got like, there was a lot of those Netflix like bullshit stories that were like, you know, 6 billion hours have been spent. You're like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Well, it's a movie that, you know, Netflix was just talking about how they would like movies in the future to have the characters kind of narrate what they're doing, so you could kind of have it on in the background, and which is the antithesis of what screenwriting is supposed to be.
Yeah.
But like, this movie does not allow that, because even if you're trying to do that with it, it will jar you out of complacency with a ridiculously loud sound effect, like every couple of seconds. So there are so many inexplicable cat noises in this movie. Like, there is a cat. They do introduce a cat early on, so it's not like there's no cat at all, but like there is just fucking meowing on this soundtrack for no reason, like kind of all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely. So we begin this right with a therapy session between the Amy Adams character and her therapist, played by screenwriter Tracy Letts, who is, you know, acts in a lot of stuff.
Brilliant playwright Tracy Letts, who also wrote this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was an adaptation, to be fair. Like, you know, so
I think he totally knew what he was doing, but
also not the first time he's ever adapted something that wasn't his own, from his own play.
Yeah.
Right. So we talked about Bug last week for a couple minutes, but Bug, Killer Joe, and August Osage County are all movies that he wrote the screenplays for, which are all adaptations of his own plays, which are, and these plays are obviously, these are award-winning, you know, he's one of those names that you don't know, because unless you're like a theater nerd or whatever for a lot of it, but like just a legendary sort of, you know, modern playwright in American.
Well, I knew
theater.
him as a screenwriter, and I knew he was a playwright, and those were all adaptations of his work. But talk about an intentional camp classic, Killer Joe. What a movie that is. Yeah,
absolutely.
Bug too. Bug is just genuinely good, but Killer Joe is worth seeing also.
It's Friedkin, right? Bug. We talked about this last time, I think.
Yeah,
right? It's Friedkin.
Yeah.
It's one of his last movies, right? Bug. Is it his last movie?
Didn't he also direct Killer Joe?
Did he direct Killer Joe in 2011? He did.
Which is tonally weird, because they're very different movies. But yeah, there are some late career. I would consider both of them some real wild late career swings for the great William Friedkin.
Friedkin was never a shy guy about doing stuff that was out there, for sure. He definitely had that vibe to him always. But so the therapy session, and you get two important things right here. We're giving you a lot of information right away, which is that she has agoraphobia.
For 10 months, I think they.
Yeah, she hasn't left the house. she's on medication, and she drinks a lot. Those are all given to you in this conversation, because while she's telling him that, you know, she's not drinking anymore, you're seeing like these insert shots of her drinking with the medicine or whatever. So we get that. We also get what initially...
Wait. We're not just seeing shots of her drinking. We're seeing like wine pour into a glass in this very epic. It's like the Ten Commandments. It's like when Moses parts the Red Sea, the wine entering the glass. This movie, like it or hate it, it is so hyper stylized that you can't help but take notice. There are things, and like honestly, I liked those shots.
Yeah.
I loved the moments where Amy Adams is in the foreground and there's a TV, like a big screen TV behind her showing like old black and white movies, and they appear to be like composited together into the same frame. Yeah. So she's like in the movie. I really liked a lot of those moments. This is Bruno Del Bonnet, same cinematographer as Darkest Hour. It's a great looking movie. I mean, it's a
good looking movie.
I mean, like, it is and it isn't. It's also, you know, it's not a great looking movie in the same way that like Darkest Hour is a great looking movie.
But I will say, like, and I think this was in your notes, was that, you know, the reason Wright decided to do it because he wanted the idea of the challenge, right, of shooting an entire movie in one place, right? And you can definitely tell throughout the movie, he's like, where can I put the camera now? Or what can I do?
And every shot is lit in a way where like you know, some movies you kind of just have the lighting set up and it's meant to be naturalistic and this is what a room looks like. This movie, you know, it's kind of lit like an Italian giallo through a lot of it, where it's just like very saturated, like garish color. You know, there's a scene with Amy Adams and Brian Tyree Henry where the entire room around them is lit in purple and their faces are purple and everything is just purple as fuck. And it's like, you don't just get that, right? You don't just like set up a camera and some lights and like everything looks purple. So there is a lot of interesting choices being made, not necessarily good choices, but you know, like every frame of this movie looks like someone thought, let's make this look interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we talked about some of this similarly in Hannah, right? Where he has good instincts to be like, I'm not going to just do like the boring, like, let's just do the how you would expect me to shoot it or light it. But sometimes I do feel like he doesn't have like a gauge on how far to go, where he's just like, let's just do it all. And I'm like, okay, well, Joe, let's just pull back maybe like 5 of them. And when we would have it dialed in real nice, you know, but I agree. I mean, I'd rather it look like that than be a boring Netflix.
Just a flat. I mean, it does have that like hyper saturated, very digital Netflix look about it.
Yes.
But in a way that I think is more accomplished than, I guess, a lot of what you see on Netflix.
Completely agree with you on that. And I think that it's really nice that like,
I'm saying this, but I could be wrong because I've never watched any of those Netflix movies.
I mean, look, they're not all like that, but I mean, when people say that, they're talking about like the kind of more generic ones, right?
Like the house style. Like they kind of have a house style.
They do have a house style because they want everything they know people watch it on all different forms of devices, and that needs to look legible on all different forms of devices, right? That's kind of what it is. But I will say this, let me just say.
Go ahead.
I think that, like I said, visually it looks nice, and it was very nice for dark scenes or nighttime scenes to be lit, to look like movies used to look when it was a dark scene, right? There are lights on her. You're never going like, oh, what? I can't really see. Everything's kind of like blue gray. You know, you never have any of that. Like even when in the third act, when they're running outside in the hallway and everything like that, it's still lit. There's still like sources of light. There's still contrast and separation between elements. And I know that it probably sounds like the most basic ass thing to compliment, but it is not something we get all the time in the digital era. And so it is nice to see it on here. And I saw a very interesting thing. I saw a clip interview with David Cronenberg, and they were asking him about film and about if he would ever shoot something on film again. And he said, listen, I have nostalgia for movies that were shot on film from my youth, obviously. He goes, it's such a pain in the ass to shoot on film. I don't know why anybody would ever shoot on film again. And the guy goes, well, you know, you get those colors, you get things. I was like, you can get all of that stuff with digital. People just don't do it. So like, you just do it, you know, like, so this is obviously shot digitally. It's obviously not shot on film. You can see it in some of those shots. You know, there are those moments when you can, the Fincherification of like mainstream filmmaking comes through, where it's, you know, when it's done with somebody else other than Fincher, who does it for a very specific reason, you get like this just looks flat and boring, you know, thing. There's a couple of moments like that in here, but for the most part, like you said, it's very dynamic and has a lot of visual flair going on. Sorry, you were going to say something that you started laughing while I was in the middle of talking.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe the correct path for this movie was this was right around the time of Quibi, and if they had just like narrowed the aspect ratio and released it in 9-minute chunks, this could have been a huge success on Quibi. This could have saved Quibi.
Yeah, because Quibi was a huge success.
I was like, I've never been happier for a product to fail. I think as I was when
what
Quibi
a stupid idea
quickly went down the toilet.
They did the thing. People probably don't even know what Quibi is anymore, but like Quibi was this stupid idea that was like we're gonna do like vertical short form like
content for watching on your phone,
but only on your phone. Only watch it on your phone.
Yes.
And it would be like, oh, we have like, you know, I don't know, like this famous actress, like Aubrey Plaza is starring in this new drama show, but you only watch it in like 6-minute chunks over however much amount of time. It's like a web series, but you had to watch it on your phone in vertical format. And then it quickly was it was a monthly subscription, all this shit that quickly was like going down the toilet. And they tried the very end, like, we released an app, you can watch it on your TV now. And you can watch all the seasons, all the series as one episode or one thing now. And it did not work. But yeah, maybe this could have saved Quibi.
It was poor timing because it came out, like it launched like right when COVID kind of forced everyone to be at home in front of their TV anyways. It's like, we don't want to, like, we've got doom scrolling to do on our phone.
Yeah,
at least we can watch Netflix on our TV. Yeah. Plus Tiger King is on. So
yeah. I gotta watch The Last Dance.
That was awesome.
Yeah. So this scene basically establishes those things, right? And like I said, it comes the central tenets of Amy Adams' character, which are she's agoraphobic, she's on medication, she drinks a lot, and then the next scene we get it's also in this scene. Sorry, it is in this scene because she's a busybody. She like looks at all her neighbors. She knows everything about everybody, and new people just moved in across the street. So like in the first couple of minutes, you get all this information. All the information that you're going to need for the rest of the movie is basically delivered to you in this first 5 minutes.
Pretty much, yeah.
Maybe it could have metered it out a little bit, so there could have been some intrigue going along the way, but it's all there. Sandwiched with that, we get the idea that she is separated from her husband and her daughter, who are somewhere else, because we hear her talking to her husband on the phone.
Hear her talking to him on the phone.
Yeah. I immediately wrote down Anthony Mackie is obviously dead, and so is her child. There is absolutely no way in the world that we are not seeing Amy Adams talk on the phone. We're not seeing Anthony Mackie on like a FaceTime call. Nothing. Why would he just leave his wife, who's agoraphobic, home alone? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but he's still very supportive of her, right? It's why would you leave then? She can't leave, but I don't know.
Yeah. And then also, I will say this, a fan of Anthony Mackie's, fan of Amy Adams, these conversations that you're hearing, which I maybe feel like maybe were one of the things that were added later, you can absolutely tell that the two people were not in the same room together when they were talking, because it sounds like just two people reading one half of a conversation that they slammed together into a thing.
And what they're talking about is always an explanation of kind of what we just saw.
Exactly.
I talked to this cop and he didn't believe me. And he's like, well, you just got to take it easy. And why do you think he didn't believe you? So it does feel like stuff that was filled in for audiences who weren't following. But there's not a whole lot to follow. So, you know. That maybe those test audiences were just dumb.
Yeah. Or maybe there was some of this Anthony Mackie stuff and then some of it that wasn't there. Maybe they put more of the explanation stuff in. Who knows? Expository stuff. But so we get these major sort of aspects of what the story is going to be nearly right away. And, you know, we also then meet her tenant, David Winter, played by Wyatt Russell,
who clearly went to the My Dad School of Acting.
I mean, I love Wyatt Russell. I just want to be very clear about this. This movie is...
I mean, I think I do too. I know I've seen him in other stuff, but this is the first movie where I really kind of took notice of him and his like way of speaking and his physicality. And you can definitely tell where the bloodline is there.
For sure. Yes. I mean, I think he's fine in this. He's not really given that much to do in it. I'd say he probably has the second most to do. No, Fred Eckinger has the second most to do in the movie, for sure. Because he does a lot in that third act. But, you know,
he does a lot the first time we see him.
Yeah, but David, you know, is the most sort of like the closest thing we have to somebody that she talks to, right? You know, in steps. Like he's around, he's in probably, you know, 6, 7 scenes in this movie, which is more than basically anybody else other than Amy Adams, basically, that in this movie. He lives downstairs, and he obviously...
This is we haven't mentioned. So she lives in this like beautiful like Manhattan brownstone, multi floors. She mentions the neighbors across the street. What they pay for their place? Well, 5.5. They asked for 6, and they paid 5.5. So that is the world, because all these movies are set in that world, right? It's like the upper class. It is, again, it's rich white people misery porn. And so Julianne Moore, the first time we see her, it's like, oh, I can't believe you live in a house this shitty. How do you get stuck? As an agoraphobic in a house this shitty, very sarcastically. It's an incredible place. I mean, it looks very much like a movie set, but it is, we're in that strata of society here, right? These are not your average folks.
Because you must have to assume she hasn't worked in 10 months, and there is not even a
and the way she talks to the young people in this movie, it's like, this lady's a child psychologist. She must be terrible at that job.
Yeah, I know. That's definitely the vibe I got. She's hasn't worked for 10 months, and there's not even a nary a question about how she's affording to live in a place like this.
No, I mean, she's kind of let it go to seed, but that's just because, she has nobody to show it off to.
But she's let it go to seed in a movie way, which is that, like, there's a couple dishes in the sink, and then there's, like, a pile of papers on the thing, and a blanket strewn across the floor.
Well, we can't tell what it smells like.
No, we can't tell what it smells like. So, we meet David. We get the sense that it's Halloween. So, like, put a bowl of candy outside. She's like, every conversation that Amy Adams has with anybody in this movie is insane, right? Her tone and tenor are crazy.
The line readings, that's what I'm saying. Amy Adams is such a good actress. So, yes,
but Amy Adams, very capable of being bad. She's been in movies where she's been bad. She's been in a lot of bad movies. So, like, she's not like one of these actresses who's like, well, she's just fantastic in everything that she does. She's great in a lot of things, but she makes a lot of weird choices.
I feel like she often elevates a bad movie.
She's in a lot of bad movies, dude. Like
that's true.
Like, and she's bad in some of those movies. Like, she's a actress that I think is very charming, very winning, and has right, someone like Arrival has the potential to do something where she has a lot of depth and stuff, right? But I think she needs the right material, and I think that she needs the right sort of like roles and guiding hands to help her through that kind of stuff. And this isn't it, obviously. I think she's intentionally playing her to be, socially poor, right? She's obviously constantly stressed out. She's constantly either drunk or hungover. She's strung out on pills. So nothing about how she can interact with the person is normal.
She's very movie drunk.
She's very movie drunk.
It's a very stylized. Yeah, like I feel like I don't think there's one line reading that she has throughout this entire movie that is believable in any way, like as human behavior. Like she's laughing at moments where things are not funny at all. She kind of raises her voice. She's very snippy with people that are being very. It's a very strange performance.
Very,
overall.
very, very strange performance.
And one of many.
Yes, but I would say. I say there are 2 truly strange performances in this movie. The rest, they're not around enough to be truly strange. To me,
Gary Oldman has a couple of moments, but I wanted to see more of Gary Oldman chewing scenery in this movie because he does a little bit, but
again, you can see it again
at the block party.
We talked about this stuff again, where it's like the difference between certain types of actors. And we talked about this Oldman last time. Oldman, no matter how bad the material is, when he's on screen, you're like, I'm fascinated by this. Like, just keep doing whatever you're doing. Like, you're bringing something to whatever this is, right? And unfortunately, he's not in it very much. But I will tell you, when we get to that scene, the thing that clued me in to the Fred Hechinger twist at the end. So we get this idea that this Halloween, we should leave candy outside. That's such a weird conversation that they have. Was one of the things where I'm like, guys, this conversation could have been cut. We get it. She's agoraphobic. I get the problem with Halloween. I get the problem. But I think the scene where the trick-or-treaters are like throwing the eggs at her house or whatever, I think is kind of fascinating, right? Like in a way that stylistically, like this is one of those scenes where I'm like, give me more of this. Like, it's crazy. Like, they're wearing weird masks. Wright is doing some really weird stuff with the camera in this moment. And we're sort of like...
The Dutch angles in this movie.
Splitting the focus.
I would say this camera is tilted more than it's not tilted.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And, we're getting this thing where it's between we get a little of her spy, her little looky-looing right into the other house during this point as well. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna go outside. And this stuff is very copycat. Like these moments where she's like deciding whether she's gonna go outside or not, very, very copycat. And this is where we meet Julianne Moore's character for the first time.
She appears out of a flash of light.
Yeah.
This very weird, it looks like she's floating toward the camera. And then, you know, we get like the POV of Amy Adams' character passing out. And then she wakes up. A couple times this happens where the scene just kind of ends and she wakes up in her place and there's somebody else there with her. Kind of a recurring theme in this. But yeah, the Julianne Moore jump scare was the first. I think that was when I realized this movie's going to be way more fun than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and this stuff is fun. This little section here is fun. Again, it's followed by two things that just I can't get past in my head, right? Which is a conversation that they have where Amy Adams' character keeps jumping in to like answer the question that she's asked the woman so plainly, obviously, that I'm like, this is obviously not the person you think it is. Like, and something weird is going on here because like she never answers her directly about anything, and Amy Adams doesn't give her a chance to. She just sort of like is like, oh, you're obviously this person, right? And when you're being this person that you definitely are, what happens? You know, like this just is the weirdest conversation possible.
Well, it's also really funny because the Julianne Moore character has this thing where it's like, see how I changed the subject on you there?
Yeah,
like, you know, it's almost like she's talking to the audience. Like, no, we're not going to actually give you any information.
Yeah. But in that moment, I'm like, wait, did you change the subject? Because I don't. I'm like, the conversation you're having wasn't leading anywhere. I don't understand what was going on. So they're kind of talking. Really, this is a scene to show like, okay, this woman shows kindness to the Amy Adams character, and they have a little bit of a connection.
We've met the Fred Hetchinger character before this.
Right? Oh, you're absolutely right. He does come before this.
I've seen this movie twice, Bobby. I know.
So you have seen this movie twice. So Amy Adams is chilling out, and she gets like a ring at a doorbell or whatever, and it's the kid from across the street. And he's probably like 16, something like that.
He says he's about to turn 16.
Yeah, 16. So again, I only saw the movie once, so I don't remember the ages.
He's 15 going on 16, yes.
Okay. Oh, and he's dropping off a candle.
I'm the foremost scholar on this movie. Me and Kyle Turner are women in the window experts.
You've seen this movie more than anyone who didn't work on the movie. So
100%. Probably more than a lot of people who did work on the movie.
So he drops this candle. This whole scene where he's like, my mom wanted me to drop this off a couple days ago and I didn't.
This is the weirdest performance I've ever seen in anything. He is like, it's so just outlandish in every possible way. The line readings, the things that he says. I love cats' tongues.
It's so bizarre.
He's got this like weird like vocal tick that he does, and like I thought, and I don't know, like I didn't like this is clearly not a normal 15-year-old kid. He's not like just your average teenager. I didn't know, like something's clearly off with him, right? Something is not right, but she is sympathetic toward him and she kind of lets him into the house. Like she is like even in the IMDb trivia, right? Like she is agoraphobic. That doesn't mean she can't communicate with people, right? Like she will let people into the house. No, but like, she's not a shut-in in the sense where like she won't even have face-to-face conversations with people. Yeah. So she does. She kind of opens up to him, but like she's like really weirdly accusatory with him, but also she's like kind of motherly toward him. Like it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like the way that the two of them play off of each other is like, it's like these are not human beings. These are aliens or something.
Zero sense. But also like you say that, obviously she's not a complete shut-in, but she acts like she's a complete shut-in. Every time a person comes near her or does anything near her, she screams and jumps. It's like you.
Yeah, but it's like you didn't have to let him into the house then.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
I know. That's what I mean. Like even somebody she knows is in the house, they'll be like, "Oops, I did something," and she'll be like, "Ah!" And she'll drop something. It's just very strange. But I think this is kind of a rancid performance by this kid for the most part. I think it's very much playing on the like he's kind of on the spectrum sort of thing going on here in a
he's movie on the spectrum.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Not like real on the spectrum.
No,
sure.
But that's what I mean. It's he's doing that thing that they do a shorthand for like this guy's a little bit askew, and it's like come on guys, this movie was made in 2019 or 2018, like we are well past the point where autism should be being used as like a signifier for this guy might be a little bit crazy, like that.
This movie makes me appreciate Rain Man more, though.
Yeah.
I like that movie.
At least he's not a fucking serial killer or whatever, so like that's a part of it too, right? That's the shitty part about the movie too, where it's like this person who's obviously has like something a little weird going on is obviously the killer, like, so like that's part of me that I don't, that shit's weird to me too. And also they play Amy Adams kind of in that way too a little bit, right? Where she's like has really weird ways of talking to people and interacting with the world and certain things she has to do, whatever. So there's a little bit of that they throw on her as well. I think to kind of like thematically connect them a little bit so that you're supposed to be like, oh, I see why she's so like, quick to warm to him, right? Or quick to come to this where she has to protect him, right? Obviously they're hiding the actual trauma of her life from us. They're hiding it from us. The fact that she basically let her daughter, like, was responsible for her daughter dying, essentially. So this idea that she would need to protect a kid would make sense, right? I think the movie also plays a lot better if you already knew that at the beginning. I think hiding it is just one of those stupid things that stories like this like to do, where it's like you're gonna be so surprised it's gonna change your whole view of the movie if we reveal it later. And I don't think that's very true. But
I agree, although holding that reveal till about two-thirds or three-quarters of the way through the movie sets up a shot that I think is genuinely an awesome shot, a brilliant
very good.
moment in this terrible movie.
Exactly what you're talking about. Yes. I mean, if it's going to be there, he does a good job and a creative job of displaying it.
I could live without the After Effects snow plugin, though.
But
that is a recurring image with some of the editing transitions in this too. We'll get to the one there's one we have to talk about.
Yeah, and I want to say this: Fred Hechinger, who is the kid in this movie, he's in Gladiator 2. He was in that Paul Greengrass movie that also came out during COVID times, or near COVID, the News of the World, the Tom Hanks movie, which is also
Western. Like yeah, I wanted to see that.
Yeah, he's in Nickel Boys. He's in Thelma. He's like a good young. He was in the first season of The White Lotus. He's a good young actor. So I want to say that because like he's giving
because he's so bad in this movie.
Because he's terrible in this movie.
Yeah.
And so we get it right at the bat here, and then we only get really one other big scene with him before the end of the movie, right? We get another scene where he kind of comes back. So we meet him, and then we meet Julianne Moore's character, and she's like, Julianne Moore, again, a fantastic actress who's also capable of just going a little too far. And in this movie, she's all too far the whole time, right?
She looks great here.
She looks great. And look, I'm never going to be upset when I see Julianne Moore pop up in a movie, right?
No, not at all. It's one of my favorites, yeah.
But she is often a actress, even in her best performances, right, who is not necessarily playing the subtlety. She likes to play the bigness of emotions, of moments, of all this stuff. And she's great at it.
One of my favorite movies is Boogie Nights, and her character in this, although she's supposed to, like, we assume, not that we don't know right away that this is not the case, but she's supposed to be the wife of this affluent, the Gary Oldman character who lives across the street. And from the second I saw her, I was like, is she just doing Amber Waves again here? Because it really kind of feels like that.
Yeah, she's barely in this movie, I will say. This is really the only scene we get, really, with her, right?
This scene. That's true.
And
which is too bad, because I think the movie actually loses something without her. She
would be more fun if she was in it more, for sure.
Yes, absolutely, because she's camping it up too.
Yeah. And then, they have this kind of night together where they're kind of hanging out, they're playing cards. Julianne Moore draws like this picture for her and whatever, and she leaves.
No, she draws the picture for sorry.
No, Julianne Moore draws the picture of Amy Adams.
Yeah.
I'm calling them by their actor names because I cannot remember.
Fine. Well, Jane Russell is supposedly this person's name.
I remember Jennifer Jason Leigh's name.
Very knowingly, this is, referencing movies a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would be able to tell you that name. That name because they say it 700 times.
Yes.
And David Winter, who they say 700 times.
Yes.
Everybody else's name they barely say.
She calls him David Winters, who's also an actor from that period.
Yeah. But I know it's not David Winters because he goes, it's Winter, singular.
Singular,
He makes a big deal about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, they have this night together. She leaves. We're back to the drinking and whatever. There's a lot of, I would say, we're not going to go through every one of them. I don't know, there's got to be like 10 different shot sequences where Amy Adams drinks a glass of wine, passes out with the TV behind her, then you get a shot of her eye opening in the morning.
Yes.
It's got to happen at least 10 times. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying they're not like kinetic, but it happens a ton of times. And my thing about those scenes is just that it's very like film school shorthand for this person has a problem. It's just one of those things where I'm like, guys, we got to come up with a better way, to show this that I would have done when I was 20 in my like film class. That's that's basically like, you might as well have her looking at a letter that says past due on it. That's like like this is like the things that you do when you don't know how to cleverly show something visually. So you tell me what happens next, because I think we meet Gary Oldman, right? He shows up and he's like, has my family been here tonight? Right?
Yes. And she lies and she says no.
Yeah, she says no. Though really she's not lying if we know the twist, because
right, but we don't, and she thinks she's lying. What she's trying, she thinks she's doing a good thing. He is. So let's talk about Gary Oldman's character a little bit. Like, she's kind of been watching him from across the street because she is a voyeur and stuck in her house all day, so that's what she has. It's very it's this real movie like thing too, right? So you've got this very nice brownstone, much like hers, across the street where Gary Oldman's and his family live, and then there's a prayer group. The building next to them, there's this prayer group that meets regularly. It's all like movie stuff, right? It's not just like regular people going about their business. There's one guy who plays the trumpet all the time. It's like, let's make sure like everyone is a different channel on the TV almost.
Yeah.
It's very stylized.
Nobody except for her has curtains or shutters.
No, even in the bathroom, right? There's a moment where Fred Hetchinger, it just goes into the bathroom and starts taking his shirt off, like getting undressed. And it's like, is he trying, like in any other movie, you'd think, okay, he clearly left that window open because he wants her to see. But in this movie, every blind is open. So it's like, no, this is just, in New York City, everybody just leaves everything. Everyone is on display.
And it's not like they're on like the 57th floor of a high-rise building. They're like on like the second or third floor of of a walk-up or whatever. So, whatever. I mean, it's a movie convention. It's whatever. I mean, I don't get stuck on that because that's a lot of movies do that. But I
don't either. Although I will say those apartments across the street are so flat-looking. Like, it's clearly just one wall and people like walking in front of it.
Yeah. Well, when she's looking out the window, she's always looking into a green screen.
Yes.
And they're comping that stuff in afterwards.
It feels like it.
So she looks, spies on them, she sees like him like arguing with like, but I would say this, in the conversation with Julianne Moore's character, she kind of gives the vibe that Gary Oldman's character is not very nice, he's quick to anger or whatever, right?
And also with the son.
With the son, yeah, absolutely. And this is a big focus, right? Because we're really focusing on, is Gary Oldman a violent, mean person, right? That's kind of like...
And he is coded 100% that way. Like everything that we see.
And right in the face.
He does, yeah.
Right in front of her. He just like turns around and open hands.
Go home.
Yeah. I'm like, geez, Gary, calm down. So he comes over.
Channeling his character from The Professional there for a minute.
Yeah. Also, I would say this. It's crazy to see this like a year after it was made, like a year after Darkest Hour. He just looks like regular Gary Oldman, just gray.
He looks great here.
He looks great. He looks great.
Yeah, I mean, clearly Winston Churchill was totally done by makeup, as we were talking about, because he's fit and his hair looks great. Yeah,
looks like just classic Gary Oldman in this. So they have their little scene where they meet or whatever, and you can tell him immediately that he's like, he's cranky. I don't know how else to put it, but she keeps spying on him, and I did write in my notes like, man, this girl is a busybody. Like I'm like, stop looking at these people's apartments.
Yeah,
and.
Well, and she kind of like creates this narrative, and it's not a bad idea, right? Like she sees them, they're arguing a lot. He's cross with his family, but we don't really see him like get violent. We don't see him get physical. We don't really even see him like yell loudly at like the son, right? It's just like you got a bad grade at school or something. And how could you do that? It's those kind of like low key kind of mad.
Yes.
But she kind of creates this narrative like, no, this guy is an abusive piece of shit. And and we don't really see that.
No, we don't. Lots of people, like lots of obscured views where one of the people talking is behind like the wall between the windows, so she can't see who she's talking to. A lot of that stuff, right? And I mean, the next big scene that happens, right, is the murder scene, right, where and this scene, the stylization of it is out of control. I like it.
I
right?
do too. Yeah, I wanted more of this.
It's very, like you said, De Palma. It also reminded me a little bit. Have you ever seen that movie? I think it's Altman, Mirrors, which is like this weird sort of horror movie
Forever
that he
ago.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It reminded me of that a lot
A
too.
little
Like,
bit, yeah.
this weird, like, is what I'm seeing real? Like, some, the things are incongruous with how they're being put together. Like,
We see when the Julianne Moore character is murdered in that scene, like we see her kind of like fly through the room as if a
yeah,
ghost or something has
yeah,
punched her. She's got a knife in her belly. Then we see it again,
yeah.
which is there's a Steven Seagal movie. I love watching terrible YouTube videos about terrible Steven Seagal
Okay.
movies. And there's one of his movies, one of the more recent ones when he was fat, and he throws a guy out a window, and they show the guy falling out of the window like 16 times from like 16 different angles. And
Yeah.
this kind of reminded me like a miniature version of that, because we see this happen twice, and I was like, what happened? Like, did someone pick her up and throw her across the room again? But no, it's just a repeat of the shot. Then we get this moment where her bloody hand like smashes up against the window, and it
Yeah.
looks like it's Amy Adams's window, but no, it's actually just across the street.
Yeah.
And then we get this like, I don't know, Google image search blood transition where these splotches of blood appear on the screen, and then we cut to the next shot. I love it so much.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, and there was like there's weird, like, did you kill me, Amy Adams? Like, thing that's happening in it.
Yeah.
And like,
there's this great moment in this scene where she calls 911, and the 911 operator is like, did you stab your neighbor?
Oh yeah, that's where it comes from.
I really just the line reading and the reaction to that made me laugh so much.
And like, I like one of the things I will always kind of get a reaction on, I mean, even if it's bad, is when like something that's supposed to be like safe and normal all of a sudden is nefarious, right? So the 911 operator being like, did you kill, like, that, like, I get a little bit of like tiny thrill out of that, because I just like that convention, right? I also think it's cool, like, there's this red umbrella that she has, right? The idea is like we see it earlier where she goes like, I'm gonna try going outside with an umbrella, because with agoraphobia, a lot of it is like the sense of bigness, right? It is a thing that like really gets people, the sense of like, I have no safety, right? And the umbrella kind of closes that down, right? So she takes this umbrella, and we get like
well, it's not just an umbrella, it's a parasol, right?
It is a huge umbrella.
It's this very
it's a very movie ass umbrella.
I was gonna say it's the most movie umbrella. It's red and shiny, and it kind of encloses her whole head, which I guess you kind of just maybe justified that.
Yeah. It's just
if you're afraid of the bigness of the world, that really does kind of isolate you a little bit. But it feels like such a stylized choice, as does a lot of stuff in this movie.
She has a camera that she's using to get a zoom in look at the apartment.
Yeah.
She sees this woman dying and does not fucking snap a picture. And they bring it up later. She's like, well, I was thinking about helping her. I'm like, you were staring through the camera at her. Like, just take a picture. But I will say, Joe does a lot of tricks in this. Joe Wright does a lot of tricks in this movie. Doesn't do a lot of his typical tricks. He's trying different tricks. But this moment is a classic Joe Wright, let's go through the space kind of oneer. It follows her from the top room down the stairs, grabbing the umbrella, and doesn't cut until we see the overhead shot of her walking
and the
out.
Camera is never parallel to the floor throughout this entire long take. It's just waving all around.
No. And then we get this, very nicely composed overhead shot of her coming out of the apartment with the red umbrella. And, one of the things that's like, I think missing from this movie, right, is that it brings up motifs like this, right? What does this red umbrella mean, right? What is it trying to tell us? This is a very distinct visual language he's giving us, right? This type of overhead shot with her with this red umbrella is, in a lot of movies, would be a symbol for something, or would be like a marker for you, like, look for this again so you can see when this is happening.
No, here's
this is
just
the
a cool
only
umbrella.
time we ever see it in the movie. And he usually is weird about it, because usually he's good at that kind of thing, right? Anna Karenina is just all of that, right? The whole movie. And so I saw that, I was like, oh, are we going to get more of this? Should I be looking out for red to mean something, in like a Sixth Sense type of way? But it's not, right? And then she kind of like basically obscures her whole entire vision with this thing and walks out into the middle of the street. And I knew immediately, right, their car was going to come. There's just no doubt that the car was going to come. And it's an even weirder transition than the one from Julianne Moore, where all of a sudden she's just in a room with cops and the family.
This is my favorite scene in the movie this made me laugh so hard the first time I saw it. I just adore this in every way.
This is a very Hitchcocky, like, reveal. I'm using that in just
What's the Mel Brooks, is it called High Anxiety,
high
the Hitchcock
anxiety.
parody that he
Yeah,
made?
yeah.
Yeah, it's that. It's Hitchcock by way of that.
So we get this big reveal, right? She's going crazy. First, Brian Tyree Henry shows up. Just want to say, Brian Tyree Henry, one of those guys,
Love that guy.
never
Yeah.
been bad in anything. Even in this movie,
He's pretty fun in this.
he's fun in it. He also brings like a grounding a little bit, where you're like, okay, like this guy like believes something, has a life, has like an idea, like, you know, has a sense of duty. You get a sense of him because he's a great actor, and he just has a presence, right, that he brings to this. And he's really sort of like trying to.
It's not a larger than life personality. I really like. I don't know who she was, but the actress who plays his partner, the older detective lady,
just hates Amy Adams.
She's really fun. Yep, your family is dead.
Your family is dead. Excuse me, your family's dead.
Show me that performance and tell me this movie's not a comedy.
Janine Sorellis. She's in Inside Llewyn Davis.
Really?
Yeah. She's in Across the Universe, another terrible movie.
Kind of like that one.
That movie though is incredibly campy. So I will say that. So anyway, I think but this isn't the scene though where we get that reveal.
No. But she's fun in this scene
they're
too.
all together. Yeah.
This scene, there are reveals in this scene because literally we think there's one person in her house, and it turns out there's like 6 other people in the house. And like every time we cut to the reverse shot, there's a new person there. Yeah. And this is one of the moments in this movie where like I feel like they had to know what they were doing, right? The tableaus that Joe Wright creates here, where it's just like 6 people staring at Amy Adams standing like stock still in this very like theatrical sort of way. This is like the first of several times they do that. Yes. But this scene might be the funniest because they just start appearing out of nowhere, and she says, "Wait a minute, what about your wife?" And then there's this like camera movement, and then we see Jennifer Jason Leigh for the first time. "Well, what about your son?" And then he appears from around a corner, and it's just the blocking of this scene is so funny. Like this felt like one of those Zucker brothers, you know, like this is where the movie really for me felt like pure parody.
So what I think he's doing here is just genuinely they think this is affecting, you know?
It affected me. I laughed my ass off.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, just let's talk about the kind of like procedure that's going on here. If someone calls in a murder, they don't let the whole family into the woman's house.
The suspect and their entire family. Yeah, come on in.
Come on in, guys. Let's just confront her all together. That would not happen. Also, they do this weird, crazy thing where Jennifer Jason Leigh is kind of like styled like Julianne Moore.
Yeah, she's blonde and
to almost give you the impression like, you know, for you the viewer to be like, oh, is Amy Adams just hallucinate that you look like somebody else? Like that is sort of like what you're, I think, supposed to bring to it, right?
Well, you know, it's vertigoing a little bit too, as much as
absolutely
it's rear windowing.
Yes, it's absolutely yes, and that's what I'm saying. The Hitchcock. Of it in this point. What I think is really funny about this movie in general, and I'll bring it up here because it's going to like come up later. There's a whole other movie going on underneath this in the downstairs apartment with David, where he is experiencing all of these people, knows all of them, knows she's not lying, knows that there is another woman who is part of the equation with the people, and just doesn't say anything until the very end of the movie. At this point, he could come up and be like, listen, yeah, there's another woman. She's the mother of this kid. She was there for a while. I know we don't know where she is. I slept with her the other day.
Yeah.
And then
we do get a scene where it's very clearly Julianne Moore that is in the basement apartment with him, and he's, you know, like, I didn't hear anything. I was listening to music or whatever. Yeah, like I think they're so insistent on him being a red herring suspect in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Because
but
he
never
is,
do I believe that he did anything.
No, me either. But he is, you know, he has the look about him. Like if you've seen a movie before, he does look like he could be a killer in a movie. So that's enough for this movie. It's like, no, we're supposed to be suspicious of poor David Winter.
But if you've seen a movie before, you also know that character's always the red herring. He's always the red herring, right? He has a criminal past or whatever, you know. And the movie plays this whole thing, right, where a lot of movies do this, where most of the time, he just seems like a really nice guy who puts up with this insane woman who's his landlord.
Well, he gets to live in this beautiful house.
He does. But like when she goes down to the basement, there's a scene where she goes in the basement where she's looking for him, right? To ask him a question. And she sort of like goes down there and no one's there. She's like, David, David. And it looks like no one lives in the basement. It looks like a basement. It looks like it's just full of like gear.
Well, he's a musician, so
who's also a handyman.
He's kind of a bohemian.
Yeah,
he's not really decorating the place.
Yeah. And then she finds his parole letter, but whatever. We're getting ahead of ourselves. This scene what you're talking about, basically, this is his wife, and she's like, "This is impossible." She's like freaking out, right?
Yeah, that's not Jane Russell.
That's not Jane Russell.
Jane Russell. No one said that name as well. It was Howard Hawks who was famously with Jane Russell.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And then basically. The other cop is like, we should arrest her for filing a false police report.
She's so funny.
And Bright Harry is like, just leave her alone. She has enough trouble right now, right? And
can I just quickly recommend, because this movie is on Netflix and because you can watch it for free, if anything we have said is interesting, like don't watch the whole movie, fine. I think it's a lot of fun. You might not. Watch this scene. I would say it's about an hour into it, maybe a little less.
Less than that, I think. The movie is only about an hour and 30 minutes.
45 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot do justice to how funny the reveals of the characters in the scene are. It's brilliant.
Yeah. I'm like, A, I wouldn't let them in. B, why are you letting them hide around corners in her apartment?
Yeah.
Like, also, why isn't she at the hospital? She got hit by a car. Like what's going on? So all that stuff. But, so they leave and you're like, okay, like, but in that moment, as the audience, I think you're very much meant to believe like Amy Adams' character is in the right. These other people are in the wrong. Someone's trying to trick her, right? So you're kind of like, okay, she's got to figure it out now. And then I'm expecting as the viewer to be like, okay, here comes the like junior detective, lots of Googling, lots of phone calls, lots of like trying to put stuff together, right? She does like maybe 5 minutes of it where she calls like a couple of people and she kind of gets the idea that the dad, they used to live in Boston. They had to move. He had to leave his firm like under like suspicious circumstances. He had an assistant who died, right? And so she goes, okay, there's a pattern here. So she believes he killed the assistant.
Yeah,
and then
he's a woman killer. He's a woman killer. Serial killer.
He's a serial woman killer, right? And she kind of tries to get David to help her. He doesn't want to help her. We hear like another fake conversation with her dead husband, and
which we don't know yet.
We should do. I knew already. Okay, I had written.
We're not supposed to know.
Yeah,
yet.
But it was quite obvious at that point that he was dead.
This was about the point in the movie. I was like, are we never actually going to see Anthony Mackie's face? Because we see like a picture of him earlier. I was like, it's a pretty big name actor to just have it in this voice role in this movie.
Yeah, and like I'm wondering too, like were there more flashbacks at some point? Were there more scenes with more of these actors in them? Because like. Feels like a crazy people to cast if they're only going to be in like half a scene, some of them, right?
Such a good cast. And Jennifer Jason Leigh gets to do nothing.
No, nothing. She just kind of gets to sit there and like be like,
well,
and she calls her that one time. She's like, stop looking at my house.
I did like that moment. I think it's right after that. So she's spying on her neighbors across. This is like after this. I don't remember exactly when, so I just want to mention it now. And Jennifer Jason Leigh is cutting meat on the kitchen counter and she's serving dinner. And it is the grossest looking. It's just blood and it just innards. Like we've talked on the show about Yellow Jackets before when we were discussing Karen Kusama. That looks more like human flesh than on Yellow Jackets, where they explicitly in the opening episode of the show eat human flesh. And I was like, that's a fun choice also. She's just like sliced it looks like a side of beef versus gigantic, and it's just bloody and wet and does not look like anything that a person would eat in their home. And it's just one of those choices that you had to know that wasn't
I didn't notice that at all, so
I saw it twice.
Saw it twice, so
I was waiting for it the second time. I was like, I can't wait to see the meat again.
I didn't notice that at all. So yeah, she's spying on her, spying on them. She gets caught, which I don't really know how she gets caught. Like she's being pretty like sneaky about it, but whatever. She gets caught.
Well, her windows are wide open and so are theirs.
It's true, no, but she has like her curtains a little like closed.
Well, she pulls them all shut very distinctly after she gets caught out there. Yeah.
It's completely unrelated that I closed all these shutters.
Yeah.
And then we get this next scene, which I think this is the moment where I guessed it was the kid. Sorry, no, we get the first scene with the second scene with the kid. So she sees him coming out of the house like crying, and she like calls him over. Basically, he comes in and this scene is very weird. Again, another very weird scene. Like
everything with him is so weird.
And she's being very weird in the scene. She's being way too like physical with him in this way. Like I was getting sort of weirded out by it in this moment. Basically, again, he's just sort of like my dad. He's like just gets really angry and whatever. Never really saying like he beats me or anything like that, but she had seen, right? He had like pushed him or something, and when she was looking across the street or whatever. And
maybe it's just me, the way he expresses this, it almost sounds like the father's like molesting him or something.
Well,
like
I think he's leaving it open to like all these things.
Yeah, but he says something like, oh, well, he can't help himself. He just gets really stressed out sometimes and he needs to like, I forget exactly how he expresses it. And I was like, ooh, this is creepy. And then I think it might have been the scene just before this is when we see him like kind of undressing in the bathroom. It looks like there's somebody else in there. And I was like, oh, this is going to be one of those movies.
Yeah.
Turns out that that's not true, but I do think it's kind of planting that a little bit.
I think so too. I think that he is playing off of what he knows is her predisposition to believe that the dad is doing something bad.
Yeah.
And that,
well, why are you covering for him? He says, well, you just can't understand.
Yeah.
It's such a weird performance.
It's such a weird performance.
I can't wait I don't know if I've ever seen him in anything else, but like, I don't know.
You'll see him. He's
now.
very good in stuff. So he's there. In the middle of this conversation, Gary Oldman shows up. And this is when he just open hand slaps him right across the face.
Yeah.
Like full on body, like one his other hand like sort of like behind his back and just like
hard
slap to the face and tell him to get the fuck home. So he leaves. And then he comes in, and this is one of the things where like just want to speak really quickly to how good of an actor Gary Oldman is. And him, as good actor he is, almost it's what spoils the twist, because there's one where he kind of like he says like my son is whatever, how he's a kid, this is weird, and he goes, just stay away from my family, and then he goes, please.
Mm-hmm.
But he says it in like such a distinct way that's not like I'm exasperated, please. It's just like, please, you don't understand. You need to stop. And I was like, oh, the kid's the killer. Immediately, I thought that when he said it that way, because I was like, he's saying like, for your own good, stay away from my family is what he is saying.
This is the big Gary Oldman scene, and he is just hamming it up here.
Oh, yeah.
It's great. But yeah, he does, even in this very, very over-the-top moment, you're right. He does kind of modulate in a way that's really interesting, because he's like really aggressive with her. He's like getting right up in her face. I think he actually even physically, grabs her.
He does, yeah.
But then it he kind of brings it down to that level. I thought that was a really interesting moment. I mean, it made me laugh just because it was because everything in this movie made me laugh. But it is an interesting choice. It's an interesting moment. But for me, I'm like, you just won an Oscar with this director for Darkest Hour, and now we're doing this thing. I don't know. There was a real disconnect there.
Real favor. That was what it feels like to me. You know what I mean? Like, you got me my Oscar, Joe. I'll come be in this little movie you're doing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, you don't really, except for this scene, you really don't need that character to be Gary Oldman. Neil McDonough would have worked there, I feel like.
I mean, Neil McDonough, I would have bought that he was the killer right away. Those eyes, those icy blue eyes that he's got. So you get that scene, and then what causes that next? She calls the police again. I don't remember why she calls the police.
Because someone emails her a picture from a Gmail account that's like, check this out, Anna, something like that at gmail.com.
Yeah, I love.
I actually liked, so she downloads, I don't know why, because this is 2019 at the earliest. She goes to download this photo that someone has emailed to her, and it's taking forever to download on clearly a very nice laptop. She's a wealthy character, and she goes, like, it's not loading, and then something happens, the cat like steps on a piece of glass, obviously because there's tons of glass around her house because she's breaking glass all the time. I feel that I'm not a cat person. I thought the cat in this movie was adorable. And it is in the movie a lot, and we hear it throughout. I don't know why. That another inexplicable choice. But yeah, she goes over and helps the cat, and like the wait for that photo to show up, like it's so long that you almost forget about it. And then she comes back to the computer and it's like, oh shit, here's a picture of me in bed with my glass of wine.
Yeah, she's holding the glass of wine.
It's like distinctly in the photo. Another fun moment there. But yeah, the police come back because she thinks someone has been in the house. And you know, my
just a
favorite...
quick rewind before we go, because we're gonna get to one of a linchpin scene we're about to get to. The scene with she gets emailed the picture, well, first of all, she sees Fred Heckinger's character leaving. He gets like in a van or whatever, and he's like going somewhere. The picture thing, yes, it downloads like it's 1996. I don't understand why that's happening.
Yeah, you see the little the icon spinning.
Yeah, get the pinwheel of death or whatever. But the one thing where it's like, okay, let's say this: when you have a real director with like some stylistic bent to them, right? Which Joe Wright obviously is. He doesn't cut the camera. He leaves the camera. You got the picture downloading like the left side of the frame, and the right side of the frame. Amy Adams walks off, helps the cat, and comes back, and it's all done in that shot. And I don't want to discount that that's a choice that Joe Wright made, and I think it's, although what's being done is ridiculous. Is like a good filmmaking instinct for that type of shot, right?
It's a fun way of showing it. Reminded like a graphic novel or something where it's like, let's do this in one panel kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, again, I do think, however you feel about what the intention was behind this, I do feel like Joe Wright, it's not like this could have been a very conventional movie, and it is not ever, right?
No.
Like everything is shown in a way that is very heightened, very over the top, very carefully considered in some sense. So, whether it's just a swing and a miss or whether there's like a knowing wink, as I was saying, clearly some thought was put into it, because that was, not to sort of, umbrella statement, but like I didn't want to watch this movie because I thought it was just gonna be boring as hell, right?
Yeah.
You could tell it's a very, very sort of rote sort of story. You could tell this in a very conventional and boring way. This could be like a TV movie, like a low quality TV movie, and that's what I felt like it was going to be. Like Joe Wright just totally slumming it after this Oscar contender that was Darkest Hour. Like, let me take the money, let me just do this one, get it over with. Just a work for hire kind of piss take on whatever. And it's not that. He really, there are shots like this that are really interesting, and we're getting to one that I think is genuinely amazing.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I think it's so funny to think about the arc, right, of his career. So we've got obviously the first two, his first two movies, which are both, great movies and people are like, whoa, this guy is somebody, right? A Stumble with the Soloist, and then a movie that you and I both think is genius, and Anna Karenina, right? But it was not like really well received, right? So he kind of retreats he tries to go into like the big budget sort of franchise idea, like a franchise starter with the Pan thing, doesn't work out, right? Then he goes, okay, I got to just take my lumps. I got to go back and I got to do something like just like very what could have been a very easily a work for hire job. I'm going to do the prestige biopic with Gary Oldman in it, right? Does really well, wins Gary Oldman an Oscar. All of a sudden, like, what could have been a director jail situation, he sort of has probably, given himself, a reprieve from that. This feels to me like he's like, okay, I want to do something much like he did with something like Hannah, right? Where he's like, people expect a certain thing from me. I want to do something different.
A genre picture.
A genre picture. I'm going to go
and also
into
an
that.
Adaptation of something that nobody cares about, the way they care about Pride and Prejudice or Anna Karenina or Peter Pan, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's just do something.
People want to see those a certain way, and if you don't do that, that was his big criticism for those movies, right? Like, not that they were bad. Well, Pan was a bad movie,
yeah.
Particularly Pride and Prejudice and Anna Karenina.
Yeah.
No, those are an Atonement.
Yeah.
People had a problem with the way he treated this like kind of sacred material. And it's like, okay, well then let me adapt something that is crap, and that way nobody can be mad at me for it. I feel like there's a lot of that here too.
And I think it really speaks to this place that Joe Wright inhabits, which is, and because some of these stylistic exercises he takes don't really work out for him. It don't work, right? I think he does too much. Doesn't have a good meter, I think, like we said, in his brain to be like, okay, that's too much.
That's a good point. I agree with that.
So he's in this weird place in between, like he's too headstrong and too almost a tourist to be a workman like director, but not quite consistent enough to be a tourist, right? He's stuck in this weird in between where it's like you're bringing him in, and I think studios that work with him, production companies that work with him, bring him in because they know they're going to get something like different for what they're trying to do, right?
It's going to have the look of quality, right?
Exactly.
Like even Pan at times, if you just like freeze a still frame of that movie, it looks like, something that someone put some time and thought and money into.
Yeah. It feels like it's very easy for an executive or someone to be like, yeah, let's have Joe Wright do this.
Let's class it up a little bit.
Exactly. And then we can put Joe Wright's name on it. And yeah, it won't sell the movie, but it will signal some people like, okay, they didn't just hire like TV director number 6 to come in and direct this, right? This is someone who's made big movies before and has a visual style and sense and will bring something to it, right? But I just think he's stuck in this weird place.
As I was saying, I thought he was going to like stoop to that level, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to make TV movie director number 600 and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to be my vision for this. And it's not. Like, this does at many points feel like a Joe Wright movie.
Yes, absolutely.
As long as you cover your ears and don't listen to it, if you just look at what's happening on the screen, it's like, oh yeah, this is the director of Hannah. This is the director of Pride and Prejudice or something.
Yeah. But also interesting that like it also is very different from the stuff that he's done before. And you can definitely see in his mind, like in a career perspective, like, okay, the kind of hot manuscript that for a book that you might is going to be very popular, most likely. Great actress who wants to do it, like someone who, this might be, Darkest Hour, I did it and like it got really good reviews and people, but nobody really knows that I directed it, right? That's not like people don't think Joe Wright when they think of this. So maybe if I do this can maybe, if this pops like a Gone Girl or something like that, then all of a sudden the next thing I get to do, I can do something really, I can do my thing again, right? But it's just funny, like the instincts he has, I think, are kind of bad when he tries to do this stuff, right? Like The Soloist, bad choice for your like you're going from like the UK, like we said, handsomely mounted period piece. You're like, okay, big stars, hot stars, like I'm gonna do this thing. Crazy failure, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna go back to doing like, my thing. It's gonna be a little bit smaller scale. Like I'm gonna cast the actors that I know and love, and like we're gonna do this like really stylistic adaptation of this classic book. I think creatively a huge success, right? Okay, now how do I sort of like buoy off that? Let me dive in and do like this big movie. It's time for me to do a big movie, right? I'm gonna do the big thing. Picks the wrong big movie, right? To do, right? Would have been better off doing like a Hunger Games sequel, right? Or you know what I mean? Like that, like, but picks something like this, which just is a disaster, right? And then he has to retreat again back. Okay, I build a little capital and now I burn it on another failure. It's like he just can't seem to like figure it out, right? Like,
although he's young enough where maybe he'll course correct again, right? Like, I mean, we are going to have to. He's got one more movie after this that we're going to have a chance to talk about now. But that career is certainly not over.
No, he's in his 50s. He started so young. You know what I mean? So it's like, absolutely, he's got. He could have 20 more years of movies under his belt. But for me, it's like, is he going to get a chance to do work for 20 more years, or is he going to turn? Or is it going to be? I don't know how well Cyrano did. It was like I think it was released also pandemic era, right? It's the same year as this, actually, 2020. Yeah. And he hasn't. I don't think he has another movie he's done since. But it's like, is he going to end up being like, okay, he's going to be like a big shot TV director? Like that's what that might be his where he ends up. But
it's not a bad,
No,
next
not
season
that
of White Lotus or something like that.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. He could. I'm not saying there is good work to be done there, right? For sure. But the way he started, it's like you expect by this point there would have been like 5 classics under his belt, and he would have been like the guy you call when you want to do this big type of movie, and it just never came. But getting back to this movie, I think.
Oh yeah, we got to finish talking about this movie, don't we?
So she calls the police. We get this ridiculous thing where she's holding the wine glass and the thing, and it really feels like a scene from the Kristen Bell movie, the Kristen Bell show. And then she calls the police and she's like freaking out, right? Same 2 cops show up, same 2 detectives show up. The whole family's there again,
Yeah, why are they there this time?
I don't know.
At least there's a kind of a reason. I mean, you would never do it in real life, but like at least they kind of are players in that time. They're just here again.
They're just here. They're just here.
It's so Joe Wright can do this shot where they're all lined up and spaced out in a very precise way, like they're action figures or something like that. It's so funny.
Yeah. And this is a scene where David Winter is here this time, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they call him up from downstairs.
Right?
And he's real evasive about everything.
Yeah, he's very evasive.
Yeah, he's like, if he wanted to look suspicious, he very much handles that here.
Yeah, but he has his alibi, right? He was in Connecticut figuring out this parole thing when she still also doesn't tell the cops, which I think is probably that's also probably illegal that he doesn't tell the cops that it was like a parole thing or whatever. But basically, I say a big plot point of this movie is Jane Russell, the real Jane Russell. You can't find a picture of her on the internet. Nowhere. She can't find her. There's like one picture of Gary Oldman's character that she can find from his like corporate headshot.
Well, when you Google Jane Russell, you get the actress Jane Russell.
Yeah, but you can also,
which she does at one point.
She does. She could Google Jane Russell, the address. She knows her address. There's a million ways you're going to find her. But, basically, Brian Tyree Henry confirms this is Jane Russell. Like, this is who she is. And this is the point where she's like, well, I was talking to my, ex-husband or whatever, and blah, blah, whatever. And that's when the other cop is like, your family's dead.
Well, it's kind of actually set up well. So the earlier scene with Brian Tyree Henry's character, he's like, call me anytime. I got 4 kids. I don't sleep.
Yeah.
And then at this point, she's like, there's a child in danger here. And don't you care about that? Like, if my husband were here, he would do something about it.
Yeah.
And my favorite character is like, your family is dead.
Yeah. Your family is dead.
Real deadpan. And then we finally get the flashback, which is, I will say if there is one thing that is played somewhat straight in this movie, you're right. It is this scene.
This whole scene is played very straight.
They're having an argument that like this actually feels like a scene from a better movie. Not the end of it. Like the actual car crash is ridiculous looking.
Yes.
Terrible. But everything leading up to that, they're going on a family vacation and, the daughter's in the back seat. She's talking to Anthony Mackie, who's the husband, and he just kind of has a breakdown. Like, you cheated on me. And how are we trying to pretend that we're still like a good family here? And
there's a line that he says that I really love when she's like, stop saying that, you'll upset her.
Yeah.
And he goes, she should be upset. It's upsetting.
Yep.
I was like, that's a good line.
That was pretty good. Yeah.
Delivered by a good actor, and this is the one time where Amy Adams is, I feel like, good in the movie. She's like genuinely feels like you said, this is a scene from a better movie.
Yeah.
That they like transplanted into this movie. And we get this visual motif, right, of the snow again.
I like the snow, Mr. Ed reference too. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. It's the horse. Of course.
The way she says it though, if you had a horse, what would your name? And she says, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
She is. I like Amy Adams.
I don't have no problem with Amy Adams in general. It's just this movie. We're talking about this movie. And
I like this movie.
I know you do, which is insane. And she, so basically, she they get a call from the guy that she's cheating on him with, and he's like, answer the phone, answer it. I bet it's him. And the phone falls in the back seat, and she like reaches in the back seat and fully just like stares into the back seat for like 10 seconds until her husband's like, yells her name and turns around, and then she's already basically flying off the cliff or whatever. And you learn that this snow thing that she's been seeing the whole movie is the thing she saw as the car like plummeted down this precipice or whatever, right? And again, a visual motif playing off of something like this is something that's been done in better movies many times, often to do with trauma, right? And people seeing something that reminds them of something over and over and over again. And, basically the car crashes and both her husband and daughter are dead, right? And it's like, Amy Adams is good in this part of the scene. The aftermath is part of the scene too.
It's played very straight. There's this moment where she's got the daughter, she pulls her out of the car, clearly not alive, and she's like putting snow into her mouth. So I told you I watched this the second time I watched this. I wanted my wife to see it because I just couldn't really believe what I was seeing, and I needed another person there to confirm that I wasn't crazy. And she found the scene a little hard to watch, and I was laughing so hard at the rest of the movie that I think I was just kind of checked out from being engaged in this at this point. But, to her credit, she kind of felt it the way that it was supposed to be. And, I could see her kind of recoiling from this scene. So clearly, again, something was done well here.
Yeah. I mean, I think like you're saying, this scene is well constructed and, acted well and in a different movie would have probably hit me. But like you're saying, it's like that moment where like the rest of the movie is so ridiculous. This scene comes up and I'm just like,
can't care about this lady's dead family because I don't care about anything at this point. I'm watching this at this point just to see how much more ridiculous it's going to get. And it does get more ridiculous.
It does get more ridiculous.
It's worth sticking it out through the end. But
I do also like the shot of the car in the house. Like when it's like
I've been talking about that the whole time. I've been kind of leading up to it. Sorry, leading into this flashback, right? There's this great moment where the camera pushes up on Amy Adams and the lights all just kind of go out around her. Yeah. where she is like basically in the dark. It's actually, she's not even the brightest thing in the shot at the end. All the lights go down. She's completely in shadow. There's something in the background that's lit up, and her face is mostly in shadow also. It reminded me a lot of, I've been in my class right now, I'm screening Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah,
and it feels a lot like one of the memory/dream sequences in that movie where, you know, the lights just start going out because the memories are getting deleted. And it is kind of a reminiscence, a flashback scene that it's leading into. I actually liked that moment a lot also.
Yeah.
But yeah, then we come back into the house in another moment, and maybe it's just because I've seen it recently, but yeah, we see the car overturned in the snow in her living room, and it's beautifully done. Like it's, if you told me Joe Wright made this movie just so he could get that shot in there,
one shot,
I'd believe it, because it is pretty great.
Yeah. It feels like this is the part of the movie that everybody sort of connected to, you know, and that's why it feels, I think, more vibrant. Again, you know, you zoom out the 1,000-foot view. It's just obviously the most like cliched, classic like idea that all of these things have, right?
Sure. And it is, as I said, all of these movies, they really push the tragedy to 11 to the point where it almost becomes a parody of itself.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is not Manchester by the Sea, so like, hold your horses here. But it sort of works for a couple of seconds.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, and then we see the reverse shot, right? We get this very theatrical tableau, right? Which, again, I think he's good at, it's very Anna Karenina, right? This idea of like, and this whole idea of his whole career, right? Is like this idea of like, feeling the artifice of the medium a little bit, right? And that we definitely feel it here, right? It is
grew up in a puppet theater run by his parents, and this feels a little like a puppet show.
They're in definitely like this thing where Amy Adams is in the front, and everyone's kind of like splayed out behind her in like a V. You know, it's definitely very, you know, you can totally imagine in a theater like a single spotlight on everybody's face, you know, standing there. And
nobody's saying anything. There's no actorly business. They're all just staring at her.
They're all just staring at her. She's like slowly walks towards the car. And then again, we get one of the few, I think, genuinely effective acting moments from her when she turns around and she's sort of like, I'm sorry. Like, you know, and she really believes, right, that she's crazy, right? That I saw this stuff. Of course, you're who you say you are. Of course, you didn't do this. Like, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I put you through this or whatever. And even the other detective is still like, this fucking woman, I'm gonna just throw her in the slammer. You know, do you want to press charges? You know, basically like.
I wish this was a bigger success and she could have gotten her own Netflix series, because I would have watched that like religiously.
And like, again, Brian Tyree Henry, this whole movie is just playing.
Me too. Yeah.
Just playing it like, this is real, and I'm going to take this as real, and I'm not going to like do anything else. And he's like genuinely like feeling, you can tell he feels for her in this moment, all this kind of stuff.
Never raises his voice. Yeah. He's very reasonable, very measured. I don't love the scene, but I love the way he plays the ending also, which is not too long after this. That feels like a thing that came out of a better movie.
Also feels like it's again from a different movie. I'm like, this is not you guys didn't have any relationship. Like, you just saw her twice very quickly, you know?
Which, you know, I feel like all these other actors are having fun. How come he doesn't get to have fun in this?
Well, because he's just like, I'm just going to be good in this movie. Like, that's what I feel like he's doing, you know? Then he has a little fun, though, at the end there. That scene at the end, he's having a little bit of fun with her, you know? But, so everybody leaves, right? And, you know, we also get this part, right, where, like, she has found the drawing, right? And she's like, this is proof! And they're like, that's you.
Never understood that. Yeah, it's just, she signed it, Jane Russell. Like, anybody could write Jane Russell.
Yeah. So it's like, it's a picture of you, and she's like, yeah, but she signed it, Jane Russell, whatever. I'm like, okay, this is
and
not.
It's not proof. Even. It's like a very. It's not like a signature, right?
No.
Like, it's like a cartoony, like. You know, like a line drawing kind of thing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, but they all leave, and she's like, okay, it's over. You know, she like talks to the therapist. You know, tells him the truth about everything that's been going on or whatever. You know, he's like, I'm going to take you off these meds. And you think like, okay, obviously you know something else is coming, because you know there are 15 minutes left in the movie, and this movie is not about a woman who makes a mistake. Like, you just know that that's not the case, right?
I would have admired that choice. Like, she was just crazy the whole time. Now she's better. Movie's over.
Movie's over. And then we get there that she's going to kill herself, right? She has like this box of pills that has a note in it that's like, if you want to kill yourself, take these pills. I'm like, what? I want to know who wrote this note.
Like you do. Yeah.
Yeah. Who wrote this note?
It's not a suicide note. It's a pre-suicide note.
Yeah. I think it's just like, if you want to kill yourself, here are the pills that you need to take. I think that's basically what it says. What a crazy thing to not even comment on in the movie. And she's sort of like, she's breaking the pills up into like a soup, basically. She's gonna put it in her wine, I guess, and chug it or whatever. And she makes this video, and they again, this is a weird thing that Joe Wright does, where he's like, okay, she's gonna record the video, and I like that she sort of like is doing takes. Like she's like, no, I can't say it like that. I gotta say it differently than that.
I don't want this to be super complicated. Super, I kind of like that.
I like that. I think it's very realistic, very human. Totally fine. I don't understand why Joe Wright feels the need to show the film version of her and then the camera version of her,
because you get to do this cool shot where that's half the frame, and I feel like he so badly wants to do a De Palma split diopter thing, and he doesn't need to because it's all digital, but like he's kind of going for that a lot here.
I mean, that's what he's doing right with that TV thing, right? It's very much a split diopter thing going on, but
I love me a good split diopter.
Do you want to explain what a split diopter is, by the way? Because we're saying it, but maybe everyone knows what it is.
Doesn't everybody know what that is? It's something that you put over the lens so that you can have two planes in focus at the same time.
Yeah. So if you've ever seen one of those shots where the person close to the camera is perfectly in focus, and the person like
and the stuff way in the background is also in focus, it's because you basically have two lenses, two pieces, two halves of the lens, kind of right. And you actually, if you look closely, you can kind of see the dividing line there, where there is like a line down the middle that's kind of out of focus. But it's always, it's those kinds of scenes, right? It's usually characters who are like, in a disturbed mental state or something. It's a De Palma trademark, right? And it does. Hitchcock does it. Spielberg does it a lot also.
Yep. And I think wasn't it in A Different Man? Didn't they use it in A Different Man? I think.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Boy, that's a great movie. Yeah. But it's just a cool thing that you don't see very often. And I do think looks, it's very different from a regular deep focus shot, because there is something very close to the camera that's very sharply in focus. And it's a look that I like a lot. And
it's meant to evoke this like feeling of unease, right? The feeling of like, why is something's off here, right?
It's dreamlike almost.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not, it doesn't feel realistic.
Exactly. So I don't, this is one of the times where I'm like, Joe, you could have just shown like the phone recording version and it would have been perfectly fine. Like, I don't need this.
I liked it. Although I will say the phone recording is so grainy. It looks like her laptop must be from like 2003.
She was not even filming on their laptop. She's filming on her phone.
No, I know, but this is the same thing. It's like, it's so grainy. It's like, this is 2019.
Yeah, it would look great.
Yep.
It would have shot in 4K, 60 frames a second.
Yeah, and this is like, first generation cell phone video.
Yeah. But also, you know what it also looks like? It looks like he didn't want to show it like completely vertically. So it looks like when you shoot a vertical video and you have to zoom it in to be a 16:9 video. Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. So she records this, right? And then she kind of like is getting ready to, what I do appreciate that she says, like, I just want everybody to know it wasn't David. He's not here. I'm actually going to wait for him to come get his stuff before I
she says that I am waiting for him. I'm not going to kill myself yet. So it's like, I don't have to disturb him.
Yeah. So she goes back to her computer. She's kind of like looking through pictures of her daughter, or whatever, just sort of like reminiscing before she kills herself. And, she has the classic movie moment where she stops and she's like, oh my God. And she like puts the death dust back into the tin and like, puts it away and goes and calls David up, right? And David's like, what do you want, you crazy woman? And she's like, can you please tell me that, because she sees the grainy reflection of the woman, of Julianne Moore, in the wine glass.
Which doesn't look like anything.
It doesn't look like anything, but it convinces her. So, David, and...
by the way, that's such a weird... I'm glad they actually paid this off. So in that scene, way earlier in the movie, when she's with Julianne Moore's character, she like just randomly takes a picture of her cat, who has been her cat for forever. Yeah. And just in that moment when she has a guest over the house, like, here's a cat photo.
Mm-hmm. It's very weird. Just to show she could do this. And,
yes, exactly. But like, at least they paid it off, because the first time I saw that, I was like, what's the point here?
The second time you saw it, you're sitting with your wife and you're like, don't worry, it's going to pay off great later on in the movie. This Chekhov's gun situation going on right now.
It's Chekhov's cat.
Yeah. And basically, David comes up and we said earlier, just says like, there's this whole other movie that's been going on while you've been stuck in this house. This woman was real. Of course I met her. I slept with her. She was crazy. She told me all of this information about their family and, and then she left. And I would be like, why didn't you tell her this at any point? You could have learned.
He's very close to the vest, David. Yeah, I guess maybe he's afraid of getting in trouble again.
That's basically what he says. He's like, I didn't want any attention or whatever.
Yeah.
But for the second time the cops come to your house, like, come on, just tell the woman. She also thinks she's going insane. Like, just tell her that the woman's real at least, you know? That's the craziest part of it. And then she's like, okay, well, we're gonna, will you, I wanna, well, she wants to record him or whatever she's gonna do. And then, like, she walks off screen, and then off screen we hear, like, thunk. And she's like, that's basically the sound effects that happen.
Yeah.
I thought David fell down the stairs, is what I thought happened. I thought he was like, oh, he's soaking wet, so he fell down the stairs. What bad luck. But nope, Fred Heckinger's here. He's stabbed him. And then you find out that Fred Heckinger's been, like, staying in her house for, like, a week or whatever it is, like, hiding from her.
I guess that explains how he appears out of nowhere in that earlier scene, right?
Well, no, because at that point he's not staying at her house.
That's how I read it. But
no,
yeah,
because what happened was,
not.
when he's supposed to be going off to this camp or whatever in that van, he like doesn't go, and he like sneaks into her house, basically, because he's the one who takes the picture of her when she's sleeping and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's all been him.
That's all been him. So he's been there for a couple of days or whatever, and he goes, the secret to not, getting caught, sneaking out of military camp, wherever the hell he's going, like disciplinary camp, is you never show up. I'm like, they didn't call your dad.
Right. And the windows have been open widely the entire time. So you can see, like, you're basically in the same house, but whatever.
Yeah. I also don't know where he's hiding. I don't know. Whatever.
It's a pretty big place that she's got.
It's a very big place, but still, I mean, she's there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, And
he's not the most, like, he makes his presence known kind of every time we see him.
What is he doing this whole time?
Right.
But whatever. And, he's
making cat noises, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. And then he, like, because the cat is missing at some point for a little while. She's like, where did the cat go? She must have been with him. So.
Oh, I never. What happened there? Because I think we're supposed to take it that, like, someone kills her cat and it's down in the basement, and that's where she finds the earring that belongs to Julianne Moore's character. Yeah. Like, was there some explanation for that? Like, what was the cat doing down there?
I think it was just more like red herring stuff. Like, you're supposed to believe it's David. I think that's more of what it was, And I just love that, like, one of her earrings is down there and one of her earrings was upstairs because she took it off for some reason in Amy Adams' apartment. But so there's this kind of, like,
villain monologues for a while. He explains everything
about how he killed these people, and, like, he doesn't know what his thing is yet. He doesn't know what a serial killer thing is yet, but he, just wants to watch her die.
I'd just like to be there and watch them die.
Yeah.
I kind of like, it's like, well, you were going to kill yourself anyway. Like, just what's your problem with me being here?
Yeah. And then there's, like, a kind of a chase scene. She gets stabbed.
There's a kind of a chase scene. All right.
They fight. They go up to the roof. And it's like this.
There is so much rain.
Oh, there's a lot
when
of
they
rain.
Get up to the roof, it's like, I mean, movies always do, like, the fake rain thing, but, like, literally there is enough water pooling on her roof that he tries to drown her in it. It's like a foot of water. Like, that's not how rain works.
Yeah.
That roof would have caved in, like, years ago.
Yeah.
But boy, it's just like they're like, it feels like they're in the ocean or something.
It does, yeah.
It's so ridiculous, but fun.
Yeah.
The music is just going crazy, and it's just like these camera angles. She gets stabbed in the face with, like, a rake, like a hand
that
rake.
moment I was like, whoa! I was like, this is what? Again, there are just these scenes that are going, like, what movie is this from? We have not seen anything that looked like this in this movie. The rake went right through her face. It could have been in, like, a Ty West movie. Like,
yep.
She got, like, a hole in her cheek or whatever, and it's like sticking in her face.
Dario Argento. It's very gruesome for this milquetoast Netflix movie.
Yeah. And then how does she kill him?
I saw this movie twice.
Yeah. She push him down the stairs or something. I don't know what happens to him. I don't remember what happens to him.
I don't remember what happens to him. She kills him.
She kills him.
No, like, I don't even think I think he more, like, falls from the roof or something, or falls down the stairs.
Or maybe I don't know.
Or he falls down the stairs or something. Yeah. It's
but it's during their struggle or whatever.
Yeah, but she doesn't have a lot of agency in it. She survives, but yeah, I kind of wanted her to be the one that dispatches him, and she doesn't really.
And she wakes up in the hospital. Okay, that makes a big sense. She's laying on the roof, and, like, oh, she's outside, right? It's like a big deal, right? And then she's in the hospital, and that's when Byron Tyree Henry comes in and is like, I saw that your suicide note. I kept the phone. Really just breaking protocol, like, all over the place. But very nicely, he's like, here, you take it. We'll come back for it. I'll come back for it in an hour. you know, just make sure anything that you don't want to get out is off of it or whatever. And I like that he says, like, I messed up so much for this case already. What's one more thing? You know, I'm like, true, man. You really did not handle this in the correct way. And then, you know, we get, you know, basically,
Well, I think he's being a little hard on himself because what the actual explanation of all this is so ridiculous that like nobody would have thought of that.
right. But also they didn't really do any investigating, right? It wasn't like, you know, so did they go down and question David? No.
Huh.
They called him up for like 2 seconds.
There wasn't much evidence to work with, and
yeah, but still,
what it turned out to be was crazy. So.
Yeah, you could have taken this. They're like, you took this picture of yourself of her sleeping with the wine glass. I'm like, come on, guys. But anyway, and then we have like, you know, everything's okay now. Basically, I have to let the past go. I'm leaving my giant apartment and getting in a car and going somewhere, you know. But like, I'm gonna have a life now. And then the movie's over. And I mean, this ending, the biggest thing this movie just, and it's not just this movie, other movies do this too. Just need to say, trauma is not cured by an even worse trauma. Like, that's not how trauma gets cured. It's not like, oh, my leg hurts, I'll punch you in the arm really hard and now your leg doesn't hurt anymore. You know, guess what? Even if that's the case, the other trauma replaces the trauma that you had before. Like, so like, you know, that part is just crazy. Like, you're not traumatized by your kid and your husband dying anymore.
It cured the agoraphobia, but maybe she has something else now that we just, maybe that's the sequel. Maybe they were setting up for,
now she's
for
terrified of weird teen boys.
Water, maybe?
Yeah, maybe water. Yeah, maybe water.
Thalassophobia or something?
Yeah, maybe. So, and that's the movie.
That's the movie.
That's the movie. Nominated for Razzies, which I mean, I hate the Razzies. It's such a stupid thing, but it was.
It is, especially because I think the Razzies are always, you know, going for these. You know, if you've won an Oscar, then the Razzies are like, if you give a performance that's even like somewhat subpar, you'll get nominated for a Razzie just because you're a, you know, an A-list actor or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, not that this is not deserving of some Razzies, but yeah, I agree with you there. I'm not a big fan of that either.
Joe Wright, reacting to the film's bad reviews, claimed this version was watered down and expressed interest in releasing a director's cut. I do not know what that means.
Sign me up. I will buy it on DVD, sight unseen. I want to see The Woman in the Window of the Right cut.
Release the right cut of Woman in the Window.
100%.
But
no, it won't. I mean, again, I feel like when a director says something like that, it's just like, yeah, I fucked up and sorry, guys. But I can imagine a way crazier, way more over the top, way campier, you know, all the things I like about this movie taken to the nth degree. And maybe if he was going for that, which I think, again, I just feel like people as talented as him, as Tracy Letts, as Julianne Moore, as Amy Adams, they had to know what they were doing in some sense here, and they had to know what stinker this was going to be. And I think they were just kind of having a good time with it and, you know, trying to do something a little subversive. And maybe those test audiences just didn't get that at all. So what was put back in was just to make it more conventional and make it actually appear as if they were taking it a little more seriously. It didn't work, but that's my read. Again, I'm probably totally wrong about this, but I will tell you, just for my purposes, as I've been saying, I found this movie like hugely enjoyable. Like, I did not mind watching this twice at all. I was excited to show it to my wife. I figured she would laugh at it as much as I did too. I don't think she found it nearly as funny as I did, but I found it very, very, very funny. Me and Kyle Turner, like I said, we appreciated the camp of this. And camp is not usually my thing, but like when done the way it is done here, I just like every choice, every line reading, every lighting, you know, weird, like let's have these characters appear purple in this scene. Stuff like that just really, it amused me a lot.
So, like, maybe there is a version of this movie that is more what you're talking about. I just feel like this movie, what we got, right? And maybe this is the watered down he's talking about, is the scenes we talked about where those things are really present, like really hyper stylized. If the whole movie had been that way, I would have felt a lot better about the movie, right? But I do feel like there's a lot of, like I said, this kind of just like shoe leather nothing stuff that happens in the middle of these kind of big scenes, right? And that stuff is stuff I feel like where I feel like he might have been going for something very stylized, very theatrical, right? Something more like Anna Karenina, right? Where you're kind of intentionally making the audience go like, okay, this is not supposed to be realistic.
Yeah, the artifice of it is kind of on full display.
And if that had been the case here, I think it would have been a more enjoyable and kind of an interesting movie, right? What we have left, which is I think there are some scenes which I do think some of it is hilarious, right? I don't think a lot of the stuff that we find hilarious is stuff that's hilarious on purpose, but I do think that it is funny because I do think there's probably a version of this movie that they wanted to make that was sort of differently, right? That was these swings between these big, huge, over the top stylization moments and these moments like the car crash scene where you get this little bit more of this like really like played almost straight emotional drama, right? This story about trauma where we are kind of dipping in and out of these two sort of modes. But as it stands, we dip into these crazy modes and then we just kind of dip out to like her on the phone or her typing on a computer or her looking out the window, right? And it just over and over and over again, right? And I think that's where the movie sort of fails for me in those moments more than anything else, where I can't really just like fully go into it feeling that way. That being said, if you think this thing is good, you gotta watch Trap, man, because like that movie absolutely knows what it is and is doing this kind of thing on purpose, you know, like very much so.
Well, I thought Shyamalan a lot when I was watching this, actually. I thought the twist was going to be a lot bigger at the end, and it was going to be something just like so ridiculous. I mean, it is ridiculous, but it's not like fun ridiculous.
No, it's
but
not
like,
fun ridiculous.
I was waiting for this to be like a, it's an all in her head, like, like an identity kind of twist. Yeah. Like I really thought there's no way this can be like the fact that the end of this movie basically tells you that everything you saw was real. I hate that so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm glad it wasn't a like schizo killer thing because I hate those twists. It's one of my least favorite twists.
Well, me too. But I mean, I really thought this movie was going to be like, no, actually, Amy Adams killed. Well, there's only one person. But,
yeah.
I thought it was going to be that.
Yeah.
But what it was so much less exciting than that.
Yeah. My thing is just like, and again, maybe some of this is like what you said, like Joe Wright said, it's watered down. You either go for it or don't go for it. You get somewhere in the middle like this is, and what you end up with are these little pools of interesting stuff surrounded by just like arid desert, for me.
Agreed. But again, I found those so engaging that it kind of got me through the rest of it twice.
Yeah, twice. I can't believe you watched this movie twice. So that's it for Woman in the Window.
That's the most anyway. I say that a lot on this show, but 100% that's true about this. Like, this is one of our longer episodes. I feel like we've been at this for a while.
We have been at this for a while. This is over 2 hour episode. I was like, man, we're gonna be done in like an hour because it's gonna be great. It's gonna be an early night for me.
You didn't think I was gonna like this movie?
Not
so much.
like this.
You thought we were gonna be able to just dispose of this, and I can't shake it.
You can't shake it. So next time we have is our final Joe Wright movie, Cyrano, which feels like Joe Wright's like, okay, time to go back.
Hey, remember me? I'm Joe Wright.
Yeah, I do classic literature adaptations. Here we go. So yeah, I mean, I've kind of been excited about this one the whole time. I'm very fascinated to see, especially since we watch Anna Karenina, what this is going to be. Is it going to be like a just straight up adaptation of Cyrano, or is it going to do something wacky and weird? I'm assuming it's going to do something wacky and weird. So I'm kind of into that. So we'll see.
Well, is Cyrano going to be from the director of Anna Karenina or from the director of Pan?
I mean, I can't imagine it's going to be Pan-like, I mean, it feels like, if you look at like stills from it, it feels like a very like Joe Wright-ass movie, So we'll see, and that'll be it for Joe. Yeah. Oh, and we can rank his movies next time as well, which I've been doing a running ranking. I have a pretty good idea.
I haven't even thought about it yet. So now I have to, especially because this one is going to be very hard for me to place.
This one was very easy for me to place. Though it's not at the very bottom. I will say that. It's not at the very bottom.
Not for me either.
Number one is tough for me. I will say that. Number one is very tough for me.
Well, I don't know about that.
For me, I'm saying for me, it's tough.
Yeah. No, I'm now I haven't thought about it nearly as much as you have because I haven't thought about it at all. But yeah, we do have to do that.
There are two movies that I love very much that I am struggling to figure out which one I put one and which one I put two. But we'll see next week when we do that and we talk about the Peter Dinklage starring Cyrano. Going to be fun to talk about Peter Dinklage a little bit. I'm an actor I very much enjoy.
Me too. Like, I feel like you can Dinklage your way through a bad movie and still have it be something worth seeing.
But he's also one of those guys who's like, sometimes the sort of thermostat breaks. He just kind of goes on, he just kind of spills out, gets very big, So we'll see what happens with that. But I'm fascinated to see it. I think the only Cyrano adaptation I've ever seen is Roxanne.
Roxanne, sure. And I haven't
Steve
seen
Martin
that in
movie,
30 years, and I probably didn't understand it at all at the time.
which I think I saw 15 times when I was a kid because it was on TV all of the time. And I really, like you said, no sense of if it was good or bad, no sense about anything about it. Just I knew Steve Martin
existent. Yeah.
had
It
a
was,
big ass nose.
what's the Splash, the mermaid movie? I felt the same way about that one. I was like, this is a movie for grown-ups that's on all the time, and I don't really get it, but, I've seen it.
Yeah, that's a Ron Howard picture.
Yeah.
Who directed Roxanne? That's a good question.
Is that also a Ron Howard movie?
I mean, I would believe it, to be fair, but it's also Daryl Hannah, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, it is a romantic comedy film directed by Fred Sheff.
Oh, he's Australian. Yeah, he made a couple of good movies. He made I don't know if it's a good movie, but when I was a kid, IQ, the romantic comedy with Albert Einstein.
The Einstein romantic comedy? Yes,
Yeah.
I remember that film. Again, these are all fit into this like soup.
It is. It's this amalgamation of all these movies that were on cable when we were kids that all kind of just like blur together. Sure. Maybe that's the next podcast after this one.
Fred Shepsey. I know we're
unpack
I'm gonna go over his
films.
or
we could just do him. Yeah.
The Devil's Playground, The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith, Barbarossa, Iceman, Plenty, Roxanne, Evil Angels, or Cry in the Dark, The Russia House. So after Roxanne, he does some movies that we're gonna know because they're like cable classics. Okay.
Yeah.
He does The Russia House, Mr. Baseball. Do you remember Mr. Baseball?
I do. I liked that movie.
6 Degrees of Separation. A little jaunt into like Prestige there for a moment. IQ, and then boy, really after IQ, Fierce Creatures is 97, which is one of the worst movies you could ever possibly watch.
That's the one that's a sequel
to
or
A Fish Called Wanda.
To A Fish Called Wanda. I don't know if I ever saw it, but I love Fish Called Wanda.
Yes, but what a terrible movie.
Okay.
The Last Orders, I don't know. It Runs in the Family, which is also a very bad movie. It's a movie with the three Douglases, Douglas, Michael Douglas.
Is that the Gene Shepard, the Christmas Story guy? Isn't that him?
No, that's Fred Shepsey.
No. But isn't it based on a story by him, or am I thinking something else?
That I don't know. Oh, that I don't know.
Oh.
Do you think I know
Maybe.
what It Runs in the Family is based off of?
Well, because there is some movie that came out around the same time as that was based on a Gene Shepard story, and I was always still am a huge Christmas Story fan, and I was like, maybe I should see that. Something family.
I don't see Gene Shepard anywhere in here.
No, maybe not.
This is not what it is. Anyway, next week, Cyrano. We'll wrap up Joe Wright, but until then, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
And thank you to everybody who's listening. Until next time.
Thank you to everyone who's still listening.
Yeah, nobody is. We're talking to ourselves right now.
We are.
But to ourselves, be good to one another. Later.